I came to the wedding, but my daughter looked me in the eye and said, "Dad, I am sorry, but you were not invited. Go away." I stood there in my best suit, the one I wore to her mother's funeral, and felt my heart shatter. I quietly left without making a scene. But 5 hours later, all payments for the wedding were canceled. No me, no wedding. If you have ever been underestimated by the people you sacrificed everything for, hit that like button and subscribe. Let me know in the comments which city you are listening from. I want to know where my story is being heard. My name is Isaiah King, but everyone back in the old neighborhood in Atlanta just calls me Zeke. I am 72 years old. If you saw me walking down the street in my faded work boots and my old baseball cap, you would probably think I am just another retired laborer trying to stretch a pension check. You would see the calluses on my hands, the grease that seems permanently etched into my fingerprints, and the way I walk with a slight limp from 40 years of climbing in and out of truck cabs. You would never guess that those hands built King Logistics from a single rusted delivery van into a multi-million-dollar transportation empire. You would never guess that the old Ford F-150 I drive, the one with the dent in the bumper, is a choice, not a necessity. I learned a long time ago that money is like a loaded gun. You keep it in the holster until you absolutely need to use it. If you wave it around, you only attract trouble. My late wife, Coretta, God rest her soul, was the same way. We built our life on hard work, faith, and the promise that our daughter Naya would never have to struggle the way we did. We wanted to give her the world. Maybe that was our first mistake. Today was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. My little girl Nia was getting married. She is 28 now, beautiful, smart, and ambitious. But somewhere along the way, she started to drift. She started dating Preston Sterling, a young white man from a family that claims to be old money in Georgia. Preston drives a Porsche. He wears loafers without socks. He talks about investment portfolios and summer homes. Nia changed when she met him. She stopped coming to Sunday dinners. She stopped answering my calls. She started correcting my grammar. When they announced the engagement, Nia told me that Preston's mother, Mrs. Sterling, was handling all the arrangements. She told me not to worry about a thing. She just needed one thing from me: the money. I transferred $250,000 into a wedding account for her. It was a gift. I wanted her to have the fairy tale. I wanted her to shine. I also bought the deed to a 5-bedroom colonial house in Buckhead, intending to surprise them with the keys during the toast. I thought I was being a good father. I thought I was buying her happiness. I did not know I was paying for my own humiliation. I pulled my truck up to the front gates of Sterling Manor. It is one of those exclusive resorts outside Atlanta, where the driveways are lined with manicured oak trees and the air smells like expensive perfume and old money. I was wearing my black suit. It is about 10 years old, but I had it dry cleaned and pressed. It is the suit I wore to bury Coretta 5 years ago. It is the most respectful thing I own. I polished my shoes until I could see my own reflection in the leather. I wanted Nia to be proud. I rolled down the window as I approached the security booth. The guard, a young man with a headset, looked at my truck with immediate suspicion. He did not see the father of the bride. He saw an old black man in a beat-up pickup truck who must be lost. "Delivery entrance is around the back, Uncle," he said without even looking at a clipboard. "We are not accepting vendors at the front gate during the ceremony." I gripped the steering wheel. My knuckles turned the color of ash. "I am not a vendor, son. I am Isaiah King. I am the father of the bride." The guard finally looked at his list. He ran his finger down the names, flipping page after page. He frowned. He looked at me, then back at the list. Then he picked up his radio. "We have a situation at the main gate. There is an individual here claiming to be the father. Name is Isaiah King. Negative. He is not on the access list." My heart skipped a beat. There had to be a mistake. I deposited the $250,000. I paid for the venue. How could I not be on the list? "Check again," I said, my voice low and steady. "It is King. King. Like the man who had a dream." The guard shook his head. "Sir, I am going to have to ask you to turn this vehicle around. The Sterling family has been very specific. Guest list only. No exceptions." I was about to reach for my phone to call Marcus, my lawyer, when I saw movement up the long driveway. A golf cart was speeding toward the gate. Driving it was one of the event coordinators, looking stressed. But sitting in the passenger seat was Nia. My breath caught in my throat. She looked like an angel. She was wearing a custom-designed gown with lace sleeves and a train that seemed to go on for miles. It was a $15,000 dress. I knew the price because I saw the charge on the American Express card I gave her. She looked radiant, but her face was twisted in a mixture of panic and annoyance. The cart stopped on the other side of the iron gate. Nia hopped out. She did not open the gate. She spoke to me through the bars like I was an inmate and she was the warden. "Dad, what are you doing here?" she hissed. Her voice was a sharp whisper, terrified that someone from the main lawn might hear us. I looked at her confused. "What am I doing here?" "I am here to walk you down the aisle. Nia, it is your wedding day." Nia looked over her shoulder nervously. "Dad, look, there has been a misunderstanding. We decided to go with a different aesthetic." Aesthetic, I repeated the word. It tasted like dirt in my mouth. "Preston's family, they are very traditional, Dad. You know how it is. They have certain expectations. Having you here looking like this, it is just going to complicate things." She gestured vaguely at my truck, my suit, my face. She was not talking about my clothes. She was talking about me. She was talking about my black skin, my rough hands, my history. She was scrubbing me out of the picture. I stepped out of the truck. I needed to look her in the eye without the iron bars between us, even if I could not touch her. "Nia," I said, trying to keep my voice from cracking, "I paid for this gate. I paid for that dress. I paid for the champagne you were going to toast with. You are ashamed of me." Nia sighed. The kind of sigh a parent gives a toddler who asks too many questions. "It is not about shame, Dad. It is about fitting in. Preston's stepfather, Mr. Sterling, he offered to walk me down the aisle. It just looks better for the photos. It makes more sense for the brand we are trying to build. You understand, right? You always said you wanted me to have the best. This is the best." She reached through the bars and patted my hand. Her touch was cold. "Please, Dad, don't make a scene. Just go home. I will send you some pictures. I promise. Go home." The words hung in the humid Atlanta air. The silence that followed was heavy. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. I searched for the little girl who used to sit on my lap in the cab of my truck while I shifted gears. I searched for the teenager who cried on my shoulder when boys broke her heart. I searched for the young woman I sent to Spelman College so she would know her worth. She was gone. The woman standing in front of me was a stranger in a $15,000 costume. She did not want a father. She wanted a financier. She wanted the check to clear, but she wanted the signature to be invisible. I felt a strange calmness wash over me. It was the same calm I used to feel before a big business negotiation, the moment you realize the other side has overplayed their hand and you hold all the aces. I did not yell. I did not beg. I did not demand to be let in. I stepped back. I looked at the security guard who was averting his eyes embarrassed on my behalf. I looked at the manicured lawns of Sterling Manor. And finally, I looked at Nia. "You are right," I said softly. "I do not fit the aesthetic." Nia let out a breath she had been holding. Her shoulders relaxed. She smiled, a quick fake thing that did not reach her eyes. "Thanks, Dad. I knew you would understand. You are the best. I have to go. The photographer is waiting." She turned around, gathered her expensive train, and hopped back into the golf cart. She drove away without looking back once. She was relieved. She thought she had solved the problem. She thought she had successfully hidden her dusty working-class background from her new shiny aristocrat life. I stood there for a moment longer. I adjusted my tie. I smoothed the lapel of the suit Coretta bought me. "Goodbye, Nia," I whispered. I climbed back into my Ford F-150. The engine roared to life with a familiar rattle. I put it in reverse and backed away from the gate. I drove down the long, tree-lined avenue past the luxury cars arriving with guests who were invited, guests who fit the aesthetic. I drove for about 10 minutes until I found a quiet spot on the side of the road overlooking the city skyline. I turned off the engine. I sat there in the silence of the cab. I did not cry. Men like me, we cry on the inside. We bleed where no one can see. But while the sadness was there deep and aching, something else was rising up to meet it. Anger. Cold, hard, righteous anger. I reached into my glove compartment and pulled out my phone. It is an old smartphone screen cracked in the corner, but it works just fine. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Marcus. Marcus has been my attorney for 30 years. He was there when I bought my first fleet of trucks. He was there when I sold the company for 8 figures. He knows where every body is buried and every dollar is hidden. He answered on the second ring. "Isaiah. Is everything okay?" I thought the ceremony was starting soon. It is, I said. My voice sounded flat even to my own ears, but I am not there. What happened, traffic? No, I said. Eviction. I was evicted from the premises by the bride. There was a silence on the line. Marcus knows how much I love that girl. He knows how much I put aside for this day. Marcus, I said, I need you to do something for me, and I need you to do it right now. Name it Zeke. I need you to access the wedding escrow account, the one I set up for the vendors. Okay, I have the file open. Cancel it. I could hear Marcus typing, then stopping. Cancel it, Zeke. That account is covering the catering, the venue, the bar, the band, everything. The wedding is happening right now. If I pull the funding, cancel it, I repeated. Revoke the authorization. Mark the funds as disputed. I do not care how you do it, just cut the cord. Zeke. This is going to cause a catastrophe. They are probably serving cocktails right now. That is the point, Marcus. Also, the Amex card Nia has. The black card, yes. Report it lost or stolen. Freeze it immediately. Done. Anything else? Yes, the house in Buckhead, the deed transfer. It is scheduled to go through on Monday morning. Kill it. The house stays in my name. Put it back on the market. Zeke. Marcus's voice was soft now. You know there is no coming back from this. This is the nuclear option. I looked out the windshield at the city I helped build. I thought about Coretta and how she worked double shifts so Nia could have piano lessons. I thought about the disrespect, the absolute total erasure of my existence. She said I wasn't invited, Marcus. She said I didn't fit the aesthetic. Well, let's see how the aesthetic looks when the lights go out and the music stops. I heard the typing on the other end. Furious, fast typing. It is done, Isaiah. The bank alert should start hitting in about 5 minutes. Thank you, brother. I hung up the phone. I tossed it onto the passenger seat. I sat back and closed my eyes. 5 miles away at Sterling Manor, the waiters were currently pouring the first round of expensive champagne. The band was warming up. Preston and his mother were probably laughing, clinking glasses, celebrating their union with a fortune they thought they had secured. Nia was probably fixing her makeup, getting ready to walk down the aisle on the arm of a man who wasn't her father. They had no idea that the ground beneath them had just vanished. I started the truck. I wasn't going home to cry. I was going to my office. I had a bottle of whiskey in the bottom drawer that I had been saving for a special occasion. And tonight, watching the sun set on my daughter's ungrateful fantasy seemed like occasion enough. The war had started, and they didn't even know they were on the battlefield yet. I sat in the cab of my 1998 Ford F-150 and the silence was deafening. The engine was off. The world outside was muffled by the thick glass windows. I stared at the steering wheel. The leather was worn smooth by my own hands over 20 years of driving. It was honest wear. It was real. Unlike everything I had just left behind at the gates of Sterling Manor. I did not cry. Men from my generation, men who came up from nothing in Atlanta when the world did not want to give us an inch, we do not cry when we get hit. We bleed, we ache, but we do not break down. Crying is for people who have run out of options. And as I sat there watching a hawk circle high above the manicured trees of the estate where my daughter was currently pretending I did not exist, I realized I still had options. Plenty of them. I reached into the glove compartment. It was messy, filled with old receipts from the hardware store, a tire pressure gauge, and a few packets of hot sauce. But buried underneath all that clutter was a thick manila envelope. I pulled it out. My hands were steady. They were rough, scarred from years of loading crates and fixing engines, but they were steady. I undid the string on the envelope and slid out the contents. The deed to a house, not just any house. A 5-bedroom colonial in Buckhead, brick front, 4 bathrooms, a swimming pool in the back. It cost me $1.2 million. I paid cash. I had the keys in my pocket. It was supposed to be the wedding gift. The surprise. I had imagined the moment 1,000 times. I would stand up during the toast, raise a glass of that expensive champagne I paid for, and hand Naya the keys. I wanted to see her eyes light up. I wanted to see her look at me with that same adoration she had when she was 5 years old, and I bought her that bicycle with the tassels on the handlebars. I slid the deed back into the envelope. That house was empty now. It would stay empty. Then I thought about the bank transfer. $250,000, $250,000. I had wired it to the wedding planner's holding account 3 days ago. Nia had called me sounding stressed, saying the costs had ballooned, that the Sterlings wanted specific flowers imported from Holland, that the wine had to be vintage. She said, "Daddy, please, I just want it to be perfect." And I, like the fool who loved his daughter more than his own dignity, I sent it. I viewed it as an investment in her happiness. But now, sitting in my truck, I realized it was not an investment. It was a tribute payment. I was paying them to be ashamed of me. I picked up my phone. It is an old model, the screen slightly cracked in the corner, but it makes calls just fine. I scrolled through the contacts until I found Marcus. Marcus has been my lawyer for 30 years. He was there when I bought my first warehouse. He was there when I got sued by the big logistics companies trying to push me out. He was there when Coretta died, helping me sort through the estate when I could barely get out of bed. Marcus knows where every dollar of my fortune is buried. He knows I am not just a retired truck driver. He knows I am the silent owner of half the commercial real estate in downtown Atlanta. I pressed call. He answered on the second ring. His voice was cheerful. "Isaiah, my friend. I assume you are calling me from the open bar. How is the top shelf liquor?" I looked out the windshield. The sun was starting to dip lower, casting long shadows across the road. "I am not at the bar, Marcus," I said. My voice sounded like gravel grinding together. "I am in my truck, outside the gate." The cheerfulness vanished from his voice instantly. "What happened? Did you have a medical episode? Do I need to send an ambulance?" "No," I said. "I am healthy. But I have been evicted." "Evicted?" Marcus asked, confused. "Evicted from where?" "From the wedding." "Marcus." Nia came to the gate. She told me I did not fit the aesthetic. She told me the Sterlings are traditional and my presence would be complications. She told me to go home. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear the faint hum of Marcus's office in the background. I knew he was processing this. He has known Nia since she was in diapers. He helped her with her college applications. "Isaiah," Marcus said slowly, his voice low and dangerous. "Are you telling me that after you funded this entire circus, she turned you away at the door?" "That is exactly what I am telling you." I heard the sound of a keyboard clacking furiously. Marcus was already moving. "Zeke, listen to me," Marcus said. "I was going to wait until Monday to tell you this because I did not want to ruin the big day. But since you are sitting in your truck, I was looking at the vendor portal this morning, just double-checking the invoices for the final payout. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. What is it, Marcus? I saw the guest list, Isaiah. The final one. The one they submitted to security and the catering company for the seating chart. And your name was on it originally, Marcus said. But it was crossed out, redlined. The digital timestamp says it was edited 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks, Isaiah. She knew for 2 weeks she wasn't going to let you in. I felt a coldness spread through my chest, freezing the blood in my veins. 2 weeks. She had called me last week to ask about the money transfer. She had called me daddy and told me she loved me all while knowing my name was already crossed off the list. She had taken the money with one hand and erased me with the other. But who is walking her down the aisle, I asked, though I think I already knew the answer. The seating chart lists the father of the bride as William Sterling, Marcus said. Preston's stepfather, William Sterling. The man who had never changed a diaper. The man who had never worked a double shift to pay for piano lessons. The man who had looked at me once at an engagement dinner like I was the help. He was walking my daughter down the aisle. He was getting the honor. He was getting the credit, and I was paying the bill. The sadness that had been weighing on me evaporated. In its place, a white-hot clarity took over. It was the same feeling I used to get when a competitor tried to undercut me, or a supplier tried to cheat me. It was the feeling of a man who is done playing games. "Marcus," I said. My voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. "I am here, Zeke. I want you to execute the nuclear option." I heard Marcus take a breath. "Are you sure? Once we pull this trigger, there is no unpulling it." I looked at the manila envelope on the passenger seat. I looked at the gates of the resort where my daughter was currently playing princess on my dime. She made her choice, Marcus. She chose the aesthetic. Now I am choosing the reality. "All right," Marcus said. "Tell me what you want. First, the wire transfer, the $250,000. "It is still pending," Marcus said. "It was scheduled to clear on Monday morning when the banks open." "Kill it," I commanded. "Stop payment. Revoke the authorization." I want that money back in my primary account before the sun goes down. Done, Marcus said. I am logging into the portal now. What about the vendors, the caterer, the florist, the band? They are expecting final payment upon completion of services tonight. Let them ask Mr. William Sterling for it, I said. He is the father of the bride, isn't he? Let him pay for the privilege. Cancel all contracts associated with my name. If they have a problem, they can sue me. I have better lawyers than they do. I could hear the smile in Marcus's voice now. He was typing faster. Okay, the wire is canceled. I am sending notifications to the vendors now that the payment source has been revoked. They are going to start panicking in about 20 minutes. Good, I said. Now the credit cards. The black card, Marcus asked. The one Nia has in her purse. The one with the unlimited limit. That is the one. And the supplementary cards I gave to Preston for the honeymoon expenses. What do you want to do? Lower the limit. No, I said. Burn them. Report them lost or stolen. Flag them for fraud. I want them to decline if they try to buy a pack of gum. I want the card readers to laugh at them. Fraud might be a stretch, Zeke Marcus warned. Is it? I asked. They took my money under false pretenses. They took it promising me a wedding I was invited to. That sounds like fraud to me. Just freeze them, Marcus. Total lockout. Freezing them now, Marcus said. The system is processing. Done. The cards are dead plastic. Anything else? Yes, I said. The house. The deed in the envelope next to me. The Buckhead property. That is the one. It is currently in my name, but the transfer paperwork was drawn up to move it to Nia and Preston next week. Shred it, I said. The house stays with me. Put it back on the market on Monday. Actually, no, keep it. Maybe I will turn it into a rental. Maybe I will let it sit empty. I do not care. Just make sure their names never touch that title. Understood, Marcus said. Zeke, you know what is going to happen, right? In about an hour, when the first payment is declined, or when the coordinator realizes the check bounced, all hell is going to break loose. They are going to call you. Let them call, I said. My phone has an off button. What are you going to do? I am going to go to my favorite diner on MLK Boulevard. I am going to order the catfish special and a slice of sweet potato pie. And I am going to sit there and enjoy the silence. You are a cold man, Isaiah King Marcus said, but I could hear the respect in his tone. They made me cold, Marcus. They took a warm heart and put it on ice. Now they have to deal with the frostbite. I will call you if anything explodes, Marcus said. Do not bother, I said. I want to be surprised. I hung up the phone. I sat there for one more minute. I pictured the scene inside the wedding, the music playing, the guests laughing, Preston and his mother clinking crystal glasses filled with champagne that cost $300 a bottle. Nia spinning in her dress thinking she had pulled it off, thinking she had successfully hidden her embarrassing father and kept his money too. They were dancing on a trapdoor, and I had just pulled the lever. I put the truck in gear. The old engine roared to life, a sound I loved more than any symphony. I turned the wheel and pulled away from the curb, leaving the manicured perfection of Sterling Manor in my rearview mirror. As I drove down the highway heading back toward the part of town where people didn't care about aesthetics, where people worked for what they had, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had lost a daughter today, yes, and that pain was sharp and deep. But I had regained something else. I had regained my respect. Nia wanted a wedding without me. Well, she was about to get exactly what she asked for. A wedding without me, and without my money. Let's see how much the Sterlings love her when the check comes due. While I was navigating the evening traffic on the interstate heading toward the heart of Atlanta, a very different scene was unfolding 5 miles behind me. I did not need to be a fly on the wall to know exactly what was happening at Sterling Manor. I knew the schedule, I knew the budget, and I knew the people. I could see it in my mind's eye as clearly as if I were watching it on a movie screen. The cocktail hour would be in full swing on the West Lawn. The sun would be setting, casting a golden glow over the imported Italian marble fountains and the silk-draped tables. Waiters in white tuxedo jackets would be circulating with silver trays of hors d'oeuvres, lobster tails, caviar blinis, truffle, infused deviled eggs. The air would be filled with the sound of a string quartet playing soft classical music just loud enough to be sophisticated, but quiet enough to allow the guests to hear Preston Sterling and his mother brag. Preston would be holding court near the open bar. He would have a glass of 25-year-old scotch in one hand, the kind that costs $50 a pour, and he would be gesturing with the other, talking loudly about his portfolio and his assets. He would be wearing that smug, comfortable smile of a man who believes he has won the lottery without buying a ticket. He would be telling his college buddies about the new house in Buckhead, describing the pool and the wine cellar as if he had earned them with his own sweat. He would not mention my name. He would not mention that the deed was currently sitting on the passenger seat of a rusted Ford pickup truck heading in the opposite direction. His mother, Mrs. Sterling, would be nearby holding court with her own circle of admirers. She would be draped in pearls and chiffon, looking down her nose at anyone whose shoes didn't cost a mortgage payment. She would be telling the guests how happy she was to welcome Nia into the family, but adding that little sigh she always did, the one that implied Nia was the lucky one, the charity case being elevated by the benevolent Sterling bloodline. She would be talking about the wedding as if she had planned and paid for every petal, every napkin, every drop of champagne. She would be soaking up the compliments, feeding on the admiration, completely unaware that she was feasting on a meal she couldn't afford. It was the perfect picture of high society. The perfect aesthetic. And then the music would stop. Not literally, not yet. But the rhythm of the evening was about to stumble. I imagined the venue manager, a man named Mr. Abernathy, walking onto the lawn. He is a professional. He has seen it all. He knows when a check clears and when it doesn't. He would not make a scene. He would walk with purpose, his face a mask of polite concern weaving through the guests until he reached Preston. He would lean in close, whispering so only Preston could hear. "Mr. Sterling, might I have a word?" Preston would probably laugh, thinking it was a question about the toast or the cake cutting. He would excuse himself from his friends with a wink, following Abernathy to a quiet corner near the hydrangeas. "Is there a problem, my good man?" Preston would ask, swirling his scotch. "Yes, sir, there is a significant problem," Abernathy would say, his voice dropping an octave. "We just attempted to process the payment for the second tier of the bar service and the release of the dinner wine. The card on file was declined." Preston would frown. He would look annoyed, not worried. "Declined? That is impossible. It is an Amex Black card. It has no limit. Run it again." "We did, sir. 3 times. It has been flagged as lost or stolen. The issuer has put a hard freeze on the account." Preston's laugh would die in his throat. "Stolen? That is ridiculous. My fiancée, my wife, she has the card. There must be a glitch in your system. Here, use this one." He would pull out the supplementary card I gave him for the honeymoon expenses. He would hand it over with a flourish, confident that the plastic rectangle was a magic wand that could fix any problem. Abernathy would take it. He would pull out his mobile terminal. He would swipe it right there in the shadow of the oak trees. Beep. Declined. I can see the color draining from Preston's face, the sweat starting to bead on his forehead, messing up his expensive haircut. "Sir, this card is also dead," Abernathy would say, his patience thinning. "And I must inform you our finance department just alerted me that the wire transfer for the final venue balance, the $250,000, it has been recalled. The check has bounced, essentially." Preston would stagger back a step. "Recalled? That money was wired days ago. It is in escrow. It was, sir. But the sender revoked the authorization this afternoon. As of this moment, this event has a 0 balance paid. We have a $50,000 outstanding tab for the cocktail hour alone. And unless we receive payment immediately, I cannot release the dinner service. The kitchen will go dark in 10 minutes. 10 minutes. The clock was ticking. The aesthetic was crumbling. Preston would look around wildly. He would see his mother laughing with the judge's wife. He would see the guests waiting for the signal to move into the ballroom for dinner. He would see the waiters holding trays of food that were suddenly forbidden. The panic would set in, real visceral panic, the kind that hits a man when he realizes the ground he stands on is actually a trapdoor. He would run to find Nia. She would be in the bridal suite touching up her makeup, perhaps taking a selfie in the mirror, captioning it "Dream Life." She would be floating on a cloud of adrenaline and entitlement. Preston would burst in breathless, pale-looking, like he had seen a ghost. "Nia, we have a problem. A big problem." "What is it?" she would ask, turning around, careful not to wrinkle her dress. "Is it the photographer?" "It is the money, Nia. The cards. All of them. They are dead. And the wire transfer, your dad took it back." I can imagine the silence in that room. the way the air would seem to get sucked out of the space. Nia's eyes would go wide, her hands would fly to her mouth. What do you mean he took it back? I mean the manager is threatening to shut down the wedding, Nia. We have 10 minutes to come up with 50 grand or they are kicking us out. Call him. Call your father. Fix this. Nia would scramble for her phone. Her hands, usually so steady when she was dismissing me or correcting my speech, would be shaking. She would unlock the screen. She would find my contact. She probably has a picture of me there, maybe from her graduation back when she still acknowledged I existed. She would press call. Inside my truck driving down Martin Luther King Jr. Drive, the silence was broken by a ringtone. It was a generic, default ringtone. I used to have a special one for her, My Girl by the Temptations, but I changed it a few months ago when the calls started becoming nothing but demands for deposits. I looked at the phone sitting on the passenger seat. The screen lit up the dark cab. Nia calling? I stared at it. I did not reach for it. I did not slow down. I kept my eyes on the road, my hands at 10 and 2 on the wheel. The phone rang and rang. It was the sound of desperation. It was the sound of a reality check hitting at 100 miles an hour. I imagined her on the other end. Daddy, pick up. Please, pick up. Where are you? You have to fix this. They are going to embarrass us. They are going to ruin everything. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. Then it started again immediately. I reached over. I picked up the phone. For a second, I hovered my thumb over the green button. I thought about the little girl in pigtails. I thought about the promise I made to Coretta on her deathbed to always look out for our baby. But then I thought about the gate. I thought about the security guard checking a list I was erased from. I thought about you don't fit the aesthetic. I thought about William Sterling walking down the aisle in my place. I wasn't looking out for her by answering. I had been crippling her. I had been feeding a monster of entitlement that was eating my daughter alive. The only way to save her, the real her, the one buried under layers of sterling pretension, was to let the monster starve. I pressed the power button on the side of the phone. I held it down. The screen went black. The ringing stopped. The cab was silent again. I tossed the phone onto the pile of old receipts in the passenger seat. It landed with a soft thud. Goodbye, my beloved daughter. Goodbye, princess. Welcome to the real world. I turned the truck onto the exit ramp for downtown. I wasn't going to the diner anymore. I needed to go to Marcus's office. I needed to sign the paperwork to make this official. I needed to make sure that when Monday morning came, there wasn't a single loophole they could crawl through. I needed to build a wall around what was left of my dignity brick by legal brick. As I merged into the city traffic, I saw the skyline of Atlanta lighting up against the twilight. It was beautiful. It was gritty. It was built on struggle and sweat. It was my city. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged in it. Back at Sterling Manor, the 10 minutes were up. I knew what was happening now. Abernathy was giving the signal. The waiters were turning around, carrying the trays back to the kitchen. The bar was closing. The lights in the ballroom were staying off. Mrs. Sterling would be screeching. She would be demanding to speak to a manager, threatening to sue, throwing names around like confetti. Do you know who we are? We are the Sterlings. And Abernathy, calm and professional, would deliver the line that would shatter their universe. I know who you say you are, ma'am. But right now you are customers with a declined card. And this is a business, not a charity. Please clear the premises. The chaos was just beginning. The rumors would start whispering through the crowd. They couldn't pay. The card bounced. It's a scam. The guests, the elite of Atlanta, the people Preston tried so hard to impress, would start checking their watches. They would start drifting toward the valet stand, texting their friends about the disaster. The humiliation wouldn't just be private. It would be total. It would be public. It would be the kind of stain that doesn't wash out with apologies. I pulled into the parking garage of Marcus's building. I parked my truck next to a row of BMWs and Mercedes. I stepped out, my work boots echoing on the concrete. I adjusted my suit jacket. I walked toward the elevator, a man with nothing left to lose and a whole lot of lessons left to teach. The night was young, and the bill was finally due. I walked into Marcus's office, the air conditioning hitting the sweat on my neck like a cold compress. The room smelled of old leather, lemon polish, and the kind of silence that usually costs $500 an hour. Marcus was already behind his desk, a glass of amber liquid waiting for me on a coaster. He didn't stand up. He didn't offer a handshake. He just pointed to the chair and then to the glass. I sat down. The leather chair groaned under my weight, a sound that felt too loud in the quiet room. I picked up the glass. It was my brand. Top shelf. I took a sip, letting the burn settle the shaking in my hands that I hadn't noticed until now. So I said, my voice raspy. How bad is it? Marcus didn't answer immediately. He slid a thick file folder across the mahogany desk. It was heavy, heavier than a wedding invoice should be. Zeke, he said, his voice soft the way you talk to a man who just found out he has a terminal illness. The wedding cancellation. That is the least of your problems. I frowned. What do you mean, open it? I flipped the cover. The first page wasn't a wedding vendor contract. It was a bank statement. My bank statement. Specifically the one for the retirement fund Coretta and I had set up 30 years ago. The Sunny Day Fund. We called it that because we never wanted to save for a rainy day. We wanted to save for the days we could finally rest. It was sacred money. Money sweated for unloading docks in 90-degree heat. Marcus pointed to a line item highlighted in yellow neon. November 14th, he said, 3 months ago. I looked at the line. A withdrawal. $50,000. I stared at the number. The zeros seemed to swim before my eyes. 50,000. I didn't authorize this. I haven't touched this account in 5 years. Look at the transfer destination, Marcus said. I followed the line. It wasn't a wire to a hospital. It wasn't a tax payment. It was a direct transfer to an account labeled P. Sterling, Gemini Exchange. Preston, I whispered. I looked up at Marcus. How did he get access? He didn't. Marcus said. Naya did. The room seemed to tilt. Nia, my daughter. I remembered now. 3 years ago when I had my hip surgery, I gave her power of attorney and the passwords to the primary accounts, just in case I had told her. If something happens to me, I don't want you locked out. I trusted her with my life. I trusted her with my legacy. She told me it was a loan, Marcus said, tapping a second document. I found this email in her draft folder when I audited the shared family drive. She was writing to herself, justifying it. She called it a bridge loan to cover Preston's liquidity issues. Liquidity issues. I laughed, a dry, barking sound. You mean he is broke? Worse, Marcus said. He is underwater. Look at the next page. I turned the page. It was a background check on Preston Sterling, the man who wore loafers without socks and talked about old money. The man my daughter was marrying because I didn't fit his aesthetic. The numbers were in red, lots of red. Credit card debt, $80,000. Personal loans, $150,000. And then the big one, gambling losses. He is not just a bad investor, Zeke, Marcus said. He is a degenerate gambler. Crypto, sports betting, high-stakes poker. He has been bleeding money for 2 years. That old money family of his. They cut him off a decade ago. They are land-rich and cash-poor. They have the mansion, but they can't pay the light bill. They were banking on this wedding. They were banking on you. I felt a sickness rise in my throat. It wasn't just disrespect, it was a heist, a long con. They weren't marrying Nia because they loved her, I said, realizing the horror of it. They were marrying her because her daddy owns King Logistics. And because her daddy writes checks without asking questions, Marcus added. That $50,000. That wasn't for a house or an investment. That was to pay off a bookie in Buckhead who was threatening to break Preston's kneecaps. Nia stole from you to save him. I closed the file. I leaned back in the chair and looked at the ceiling fans spinning slowly overhead. She stole from the Sunny Day Fund, Coretta's money. I thought about Nia standing at the gate in her $15,000 dress. I thought about the way she looked at me with that mixture of pity and annoyance. She wasn't ashamed of my money. She loved my money. She would wrap herself in my money if she could. She was ashamed of the source. She was ashamed of the sweat. She was ashamed of the black hands that earned it. She wanted the fruit, but she wanted to chop down the tree. I realized then that I hadn't raised a daughter. Somewhere in the years of private schools and debutante balls, I had raised a parasite. A snake, and not just any snake. A snake that would bite the hand that fed it and then complain that the blood ruined the flavor of the meal. I took another drink of the whiskey. It burned going down, cleansing the bile from my throat. She didn't just hurt my feelings, Marcus, I said quietly. She robbed me. She committed a felony. Technically, yes, Marcus said. But since you gave her access, it is a gray area. But Zeke, the intent is clear. She values that man's lies more than your truth. I stood up and walked to the window. I looked down at the Atlanta traffic. People going home to their families. People working hard. People living honest lives. I gave them a penthouse, I said. The one on Peachtree, Marcus asked. The one with the skyline view? Yes. I let them live there rent-free for 2 years. So they could save for a house, she told me. So Preston could build his portfolio. I laughed again. Build his portfolio. He was building a house of cards on my back. Marcus, I said, turning away from the window, the house in Buckhead. The wedding gift. Yes, that is dead. We established that. But the penthouse, the one they are sleeping in tonight, the one where they have all their designer clothes and their wedding gifts. It is in your name, Zeke. Fully. There is no lease. It is a tenancy at will. Good, I said. End it. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You want to evict them? No, I said. Eviction takes 30 days. Eviction implies they have rights. They are squatters, Marcus. They are thieves. I want you to draft a notice of immediate revocation of privileges. I want you to call the building management. Tell them I have lost my keys. Tell them I suspect unauthorized entry. Tell them to change the locks. Tonight. Tonight, Marcus asked. It is their wedding night, Zeke. No, I corrected him. It was supposed to be their wedding night. But there was no wedding. I canceled it, remember? So technically it is just a Saturday, and on Saturdays I clean house. I walked back to the desk and picked up the file. I looked at the withdrawal slip one more time. $50,000. Coretta would have been heartbroken. She would have made excuses for Nia. She would have said, she is young Isaiah. She is in love. But Coretta isn't here. And I am done making excuses. They want to live the high life, I said, my voice hardening into steel. Let them pay for it. Let Preston use his crypto millions to pay for a hotel room. Let Nia use her aesthetic to keep warm when she finds her Louis Vuitton bags on the curb. Marcus pulled a legal pad toward him. He picked up a pen. I will call the building superintendent, he said. He owes you a favor from the labor dispute last year. He will do it. Tell him to bag everything up, I said. Don't let them inside. Not for a toothbrush, not for a phone charger. If they want their things, they can make an appointment to come collect them from the loading dock, like vendors, because that is what they treated me like. A vendor, a service provider. You are a hard man, Isaiah, Marcus said, shaking his head. I am a businessman, Marcus, and I just realized I have been investing in a failing asset. It is time to liquidate. I finished the whiskey in one swallow. The burn was good. It felt like fuel. Do it, Marcus. And send me the bill for the locksmith. I want to frame it. I walked out of the office. The elevator ride down felt faster than the ride up. I stepped out into the cool evening air of downtown Atlanta. My phone was still in the truck, turned off. I didn't need to check it to know it was probably exploding with voicemails, panic, anger, bargaining, the stages of grief for a lifestyle that just died. I got into my truck. I didn't go home. I wasn't ready to sit in the empty house where Nia grew up. Instead, I drove toward the West End, to the old neighborhood, to the diner where nobody cared about your last name or your bank account, only about whether you treated people right. Nia was ashamed of where she came from. She was ashamed of the struggle. She wanted to scrub the black off her history and paint it white with sterling money. Well, she was about to learn a hard lesson. You can't paint over rot, and you can't build a castle on a foundation of lies. I merged onto the highway. The city lights blurred past me. I thought about the $50,000. I thought about the look on the security guard's face. I thought about, you don't fit the aesthetic. I gripped the wheel. I hope you like the aesthetic of a Motel 6 sweetheart. Because that is the only reservation you have left. I sat in the back booth of the Soul Food Diner on Martin Luther King Jr. Drive a plate of catfish and collard greens growing cold in front of me. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, a familiar comforting sound that usually signaled the end of a long work week. But tonight my attention was entirely focused on the cracked screen of my phone propped up against the napkin dispenser. I wasn't there physically, but thanks to technology and a little family loyalty, I had a front row seat to the circus I had just shut down. I had called in a favor from my nephew Ray. Ray isn't technically my nephew, he is my second cousin's boy, but in our family titles don't matter as much as blood. Ray works HVAC, has hands as rough as mine, and he hates the Sterlings. He only got an invite because he fixed the AC in Nia's penthouse for free last summer, and she needed a few more bodies on her side of the aisle to make it look like she hadn't completely abandoned her roots. They stuck him at table 42 right by the kitchen swing doors, the worst seat in the house. But right now, table 42 was the best vantage point in the world. Ray had his phone propped up behind a centerpiece of white hydrangeas, live streaming the disaster via a video call. He wasn't saying much, just letting the camera do the talking. And the camera was showing me a masterpiece of chaos. The ballroom at Sterling Manor was beautiful, I will give them that. Crystal chandeliers, silk tablecloths, waiters in white gloves. But the atmosphere was thicker than smoke. You could feel the tension vibrating through the pixelated screen. The guests were seated, napkins in laps, silverware polished and ready. But the plates were empty. It had been an hour since they moved from the cocktail hour to the reception hall. An hour of sitting, an hour of waiting for a dinner service that I knew was never coming. I watched as a waiter walked past Ray's table. He wasn't carrying food, he was collecting the wine glasses, not refilling them, collecting them. "What is happening?" I heard a woman's voice whisper near Ray's phone. "Why are they taking the water pitchers?" I saw guests checking their watches. I saw the whispers jumping from table to table like a wildfire. The Sterling side of the room, the side filled with bankers and debutantes and people who inherited their money from grandfathers they never met, looked indignant. They were looking around with raised eyebrows, tapping their fingers on the table, expecting service as their birthright. On Nia's side, the few folks from the old neighborhood who made the cut looked uncomfortable. They knew the look of trouble. They knew the smell of a bill coming due. Then the camera shifted. Movement at the head table. Preston was nowhere to be seen, probably in the back office sweating through his tuxedo, trying to explain to Mr. Abernathy why his crypto wallet was empty. Nia was sitting at the head table alone, her head bowed, staring at her empty plate. She looked small. The $15,000 dress looked heavy on her now, like a costume she wanted to take off. But it was the woman standing up who caught my attention. Mrs. Evelyn Sterling, the mother of the groom. She tapped a spoon against a glass. Ding, ding, ding. The room fell silent. She stood up, smoothing the front of her silver gown. She looked every inch the matriarch. Her hair was perfect. Her diamonds, which I happened to know were insured because they couldn't afford to replace them, glittered under the lights. She grabbed the microphone from the stand. She was smiling, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was a shark smile. It was the smile of a woman who was about to throw someone into the chum to save herself. I turned up the volume on my phone. The diner was quiet, so her voice rang out clear and sharp, dripping with that fake southern charm that barely covers the venom underneath. "Friends, family, distinguished guests," she began. Her voice was steady, practiced. "I must apologize for the delay in our service this evening. I know you are all eager to celebrate this union and enjoy the exquisite meal we have prepared." She paused for effect. She looked over at Nia. The look wasn't motherly, it was predatory. Unfortunately, she continued, letting out a heavy, dramatic sigh. "We have encountered a slight administrative hiccup. It appears there has been a significant technical failure regarding the financial arrangements from the bride's side of the family." I sat up straighter in the booth. I felt the heat rise in my neck. She wasn't just deflecting, she was attacking. "As you know," she went on, her voice lowering into a conspiratorial tone, "the Sterlings have always prided ourselves on our hospitality. We assume that certain obligation, certain cultural understandings regarding the hosting of such an event were being met with the same level of professionalism and liquidity that we operate with. Sadly, it seems we were mistaken. Cultural understandings, liquidity." I knew exactly what she was saying. She wasn't saying the check bounced. She was saying those people couldn't pay. She was playing into every stereotype, every prejudice in that room to save her own face. She was painting my daughter, and by extension me, as unreliable, broke, and out of our depth. She was sacrificing Nia's dignity to protect the Sterling reputation. "We are working diligently to resolve this lack of funding," Evelyn said, her hand fluttering to her chest like a wounded bird. "But I must ask for your patience. It is difficult when one has to educate new family members on the protocols of high society. We apologize for their lack of preparation." The room erupted in murmurs. I saw the Sterling guests nodding, leaning in to whisper to each other. "I knew it," their faces said. "I knew she wasn't one of us." I looked at Nia on the screen. She hadn't moved. She hadn't stood up to defend herself. She hadn't grabbed the mic to say, "My father paid for this, he paid for everything." She just sat there taking it, letting this woman, this broke, pretentious vulture, pick the meat off her bones. Nia was ashamed. She was ashamed of the disruption, yes. But she was so desperate to be a Sterling, so desperate to fit into their world, that she was willing to let them slander her own blood just to stay at the table. She would rather be the victim of technical difficulties than the daughter of Isaiah King. I let out a short, cold laugh. It startled the waitress, refilling coffee at the counter. "You want to talk about liquidity, Evelyn," I muttered to the screen. "You want to talk about protocols?" She thought she was saving the ship. She thought if she blamed the help, blamed the other, she could keep her social standing intact. She thought I was just some old man who got his feelings hurt and ran away. She didn't know I was watching. She didn't know I was the bank. And banks don't get mad. Banks foreclose. I minimized the video window but kept the audio running. I opened my messaging app. I found Marcus's thread. I didn't need to type a long explanation. I didn't need to rant. I just needed to pull the final thread that would unravel the sweater completely. Marcus and I had a contingency plan. We called it Clause 4. It was embedded in the gift contracts for the assets I had provided Nia and Preston over the last 2 years. The cars, the apartment lease, the engagement ring insurance, even the furniture in the penthouse. Technically, legally, those items were loaned assets until the marriage certificate was signed and filed. Until that moment, they remained the property of King Logistics Holdings. And since the wedding was currently imploding and no certificate would be signed tonight, I typed 3 words. Activate Clause 4. I hit send. I switched back to the video feed. Evelyn was still talking, trying to smooth things over, promising that the bar would reopen soon. It wouldn't, and that this was just a misunderstanding by people who aren't used to this level of event. I took a bite of my catfish. It was perfectly fried, crispy on the outside, tender on the inside. 5 miles away, Marcus was hitting a button on his computer. That button was sending automated eviction and repossession notices to the leasing office of the Peachtree penthouse. It was sending a stolen vehicle alert to the GPS trackers in Preston's Porsche and Nia's Range Rover, which would remotely disable the ignitions the next time they turned off. It was alerting the insurance company to cancel the policy on the diamond ring on Nia's finger. But the most immediate effect of Clause 4 was digital. I watched on the screen as Preston checked his phone. He must have gotten the notification. His face went from worried to terrified. He looked at his mother, who was still rambling on the mic. He grabbed her arm. Evelyn stopped mid-sentence. "Preston, darling, I am addressing the guests." "Mother," I heard him whisper the microphone, picking up his panic. "The penthouse. The lockbox code just changed. We got an email. It says lease terminated due to breach of contract, and the car, my app says the Porsche is disabled." Evelyn forgot to move the microphone away. "What do you mean, disabled?" "I mean Dad. I mean Isaiah. He owns it all, Mother. The apartment, the cars, the furniture. He just took it back. He took it all back." The silence in the room changed. It wasn't awkward anymore. It was heavy. It was the silence of a bomb squad watching the timer hit 0. Clause 4 meant total asset recovery. It meant that when they left this disastrous wedding, they weren't going home to a luxury apartment to cry. They were going to a locked door. They weren't driving away in luxury SUVs. They were calling Uber. They were homeless. They were carless. And thanks to Evelyn's little speech, everyone in Atlanta was watching it happen. I saw Nia lift her head. She looked at Preston. She heard what he said. "He owns it all," she whispered. She looked directly into the camera lens, almost as if she knew I was there. For the first time all day, she didn't look like a bride. She looked like a daughter who realized she just burned down her own house. I took another sip of iced tea. "That is right, baby girl," I said to the phone. "I own the aesthetic, and I just turned the lights off." Evelyn dropped the microphone. It hit the floor with a screech of feedback that made everyone cover their ears. The show was over. The lesson had begun. The silence in my truck was heavy, but it was the good kind of heavy. The kind that settles on your shoulders after a long day of hauling freight, when you know the job is done right. I sat in the parking lot of Marcus's office building for a long time, just watching the city lights of Atlanta flicker. I did not need to be at Sterling Manor to know the carnage I had left behind. I knew the math. And the math said that right about now, the reality was hitting the fan. I imagined the scene at the venue as the staff began to clear the tables. The guests, the high society elite that Preston and his mother had curated so carefully, were not leaving with full bellies and party favors. They were leaving with receipts. Mr. Abernathy, the venue manager, was a man who ran a tight ship. When the wire transfer was recalled, he did not just stop the service. He presented the bill. I could see the waiters moving through the stunned crowd with card readers. $200 for the bottle of Merlot at table 5, they would say. $50 for the valet. The Sterlings, who prided themselves on their generosity with other people's money, were suddenly forced to ask their guests to pay for their own drinks. The humiliation would be absolute. The whispers would travel faster than the speed of light through the Atlanta social scene. By tomorrow morning, everyone from Buckhead to Bank Row would know that the Sterling wedding was a bouncing check wrapped in silk. But the real show was happening in the back office. That is where they kept Nia and Preston. They were not cutting the cake. They were not having their first dance. They were being held as collateral. Abernathy would have made them sign promissory notes, personal guarantees, anything to cover the $50,000 hole in his ledger for the cocktail hour alone. They would be signing their names with shaking hands, knowing they did not have 50 cents, let alone $50,000. Finally, they were released. I checked the GPS tracker app on my phone one last time before Marcus disabled their accounts entirely. I saw the dots moving away from the venue. They were heading into the city. They were heading to the penthouse on Peachtree Street. They thought the bleeding had stopped. They thought they could retreat to their fortress in the sky, cry about the injustice of it all, and plot their revenge in the morning. They thought they still had a home. I started my truck and drove slowly toward the diner. I did not need to rush. The trap was already sprung. An hour later, Nia and Preston arrived at the high-rise. I can picture it clearly. Nia, her wedding dress stained with mud at the hem from dragging it through the parking lot, her makeup ruined by tears. Preston, his tie undone, his face red with a mixture of scotch and rage. They walked into the marble lobby, ignoring the doorman, just wanting to get to the elevator, get to the 25th floor, and collapse. They walked to the elevator bank. Preston reached into his pocket and pulled out his key fob. He pressed it against the sensor. Nothing happened. No beep, no green light. The elevator doors stayed shut. He probably pressed it again harder, jamming the plastic against the reader. Still, nothing. That is when Mr. Henderson, the building superintendent, would have stepped out from behind the concierge desk. Henderson is an old-school guy, a man I helped out years ago when his union was on strike. He respects a man who keeps his word, and he has zero tolerance for nonsense. Mr. Sterling Henderson would say, his voice deep and echoing in the lobby. "The fob has been deactivated." Preston would spin around, his eyes wild. "What are you talking about?" "Let us up. It is my wedding night. I live here." "Not anymore," Henderson would reply, crossing his arms over his chest. "The leaseholder, Mr. Isaiah King, contacted management this evening. He invoked the immediate termination clause for unauthorized occupants. The lease is void." Nia would step forward, then trembling. "Mr. Henderson, please." "It's me." "Nia, my dad, he is just angry. We just need to go upstairs and sleep. We will sort this out tomorrow." Henderson would shake his head, his face impassive. "I cannot do that, Miss King. The locks have already been changed, and per Mr. King's instructions, your personal effects have been removed from the unit." "Removed," Preston would screech. "Removed where? That is my property. I have suits in there worth more than your car." Henderson would point a finger toward the service entrance, the side door near the loading dock where the garbage trucks pulled up. "Your items have been bagged and placed in the loading bay, sir. You have 30 minutes to collect them before the sanitation crew does their midnight sweep." I can only imagine the sound of Nia's gasp. The loading bay, the trash dock. They ran outside. They ran around the corner of the building to the concrete bay where the dumpsters lived. And there, piled up against the brick wall under a flickering yellow security light, was their life. It was not packed in moving boxes. It was not organized. It was in heavy-duty black contractor trash bags. My instructions to the movers had been specific. Pack it like you are cleaning out a foreclosed home. Preston's Italian suits were wadded up with his dirty gym socks. Nia's designer shoes were thrown in with the kitchen utensils. Her jewelry box was dumped into a bag with the bathroom towels. It was a mountain of black plastic looking like garbage waiting for the landfill. Preston ripped open a bag. A silk tie fell out into a puddle of oil on the concrete. He screamed. It was a primal sound, a scream of a man who believes the universe owes him everything and has suddenly stopped paying. "My father is insane," he howled, kicking a bag that probably contained his gaming console. "He has lost his mind. How dare he? How dare he do this to the Sterling family? Does he know who we are?" Nia stood there staring at the bags. She looked at the service door that was locked tight. She looked at the penthouse balcony far above, dark and empty against the night sky. "He dared," she whispered. She finally understood. "He dared because he owns it." Preston was pacing now, frantic. "We have to call the police. We have to sue him. This is illegal eviction. It is not eviction if you never paid rent." "Preston," Nia snapped, her voice cracking. "We were guests. We were living on his charity. And he just cut us off. Well, fix it," Preston yelled, turning on her. "Call him, cry, beg. Do whatever you have to do. I am not sleeping on the street. I am a Sterling." Nia looked at him, really looked at him. Maybe for the first time she saw the fear behind the arrogance. She saw that without my money, Preston Sterling was just a man in a rented tuxedo standing next to a dumpster. She reached into her purse. She pulled out her phone. But she didn't call me from her number. She knew I wouldn't answer. She knew she was blocked. She looked at Preston. "Give me your phone," she said. Preston handed it over. His hands were shaking. I was sitting in my truck, finishing the last of my sweet potato pie when my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number, a number I didn't recognize. I knew who it was. It was the call I had been waiting for. I wiped my mouth with a paper napkin. I took a sip of my coffee. I let it ring twice, 3 times. I wanted them to sweat. I wanted them to wonder if I had gone to sleep, if I had simply stopped caring entirely. On the 4th ring, I slid my thumb across the screen. I didn't say hello. I didn't say a word. I just held the phone to my ear and listened to the breathing on the other end. It was ragged, panicked breathing, the sound of someone who had been running and just hit a wall. "Daddy." The voice was small. It wasn't the voice of the bride who told me to go away. It was the voice of a little girl who had scraped her knee. But I wasn't buying it. Not tonight. "Hello, Nia," I said. My voice was calm, steady as a rock. "Daddy, please," she sobbed. "We are outside. We are in the alley. Our clothes. Everything is in trash bags. We can't get into the apartment." "I know," I said. "I ordered the bags. Heavy duty. Double ply. I didn't want your things to get wet." "Daddy, stop it. This isn't funny. We have nowhere to go. All the cards are declined. The car won't start. We are stranded." "You are not stranded, Nia," I said. "You are in downtown Atlanta. There are plenty of hotels. We don't have any money. Preston's accounts, they are empty, and you froze mine." I took a deep breath. I leaned back in the booth. "You wanted a wedding without me. Nia, you wanted a life that fit the Sterling aesthetic. Well, this is it. This is what independence looks like. It looks like paying your own bills. It looks like finding your own shelter. Daddy, please, I am sorry. I am sorry about the gate. I am sorry about everything. Just unlock the door. Just transfer some money. We can talk about this tomorrow." "No," I said. "We are done talking. You told me I was an embarrassment. You told me I didn't belong in your world. So I removed myself, and I took my world with me. My money, my houses, my cars, they are all part of the Isaiah King aesthetic, and you just evicted yourself from it." I heard Preston yelling in the background, "Tell him I will sue him. Tell him I will ruin him." I laughed. It was a low rumble in my chest. "Tell your husband I said that he is welcome to try. But lawyers cost money, and he doesn't have enough to buy a hamburger right now." "Daddy, where are we supposed to sleep?" Nia wailed. I looked out the window of the diner. Down the street, the neon sign of the Starlight Motel flickered. It was a place for truckers and people down on their luck. Rooms were $40 a night, cash only. "There is a Motel 6 off the interstate," I said. "Or the Starlight. It is cheap, clean enough. You might find a few bugs, but they are honest bugs." "You can't be serious," Nia whispered. "I have never been more serious in my life, baby girl. You wanted to be a grown woman. Be one. Figure it out. But Daddy..." "Good night, Nia. Enjoy your honeymoon." I hung up the phone. I didn't turn it off this time. I placed it on the table. I paid my bill at the diner. I left a $20 tip for the waitress who had kept my coffee warm. I walked out to my truck. I imagined them dragging those black trash bags down the alley. I imagined Preston Sterling, the aristocrat, trying to hail a cab with no cash, trying to negotiate a ride to a Fleabag motel. I imagined Nia sitting on the edge of a stained mattress looking at her ruined wedding dress, realizing that the fairy tale was actually a horror story and she had written the script herself. It was a harsh lesson, maybe the hardest I ever had to teach. But you cannot learn to walk if someone is always carrying you. And tonight, for the first time in her life, Nia was going to have to learn how to stand on her own 2 feet or crawl. I drove home to my empty house. It was quiet. It was lonely. but it was mine. Paid for. Earned. And as I laid my head down on the pillow, I slept the sleep of a man who had finally cleaned his house. The phone rang at 2:47 in the morning. I was sitting in my leather recliner in the den, a single lamp casting a yellow pool of light on the hardwood floor. I hadn't gone to bed. I couldn't. Adrenaline has a way of keeping an old man awake better than any cup of coffee. I was just sitting there listening to the old grandfather clock tick in the hallway, waiting for the inevitable. I looked at the caller ID. It wasn't a cell phone number. It was a landline. Starlight Motel, front desk. I let a small, humorless smile touch my lips. They had made it. They had dragged their trash bags of designer clothes into the lobby of the cheapest dive on the interstate, paid cash with whatever crumpled bills Preston had in his pocket, and now they were calling me from a room that probably smelled like stale cigarettes and regret. I picked up the receiver. I didn't say a word. I just breathed into the line and waited. Daddy. The voice was shrill, hysterical. It was Nia, but stripped of all that polished upper-crust accent she had been practicing for years. She sounded like the child who used to throw tantrums in the grocery store when I wouldn't buy her the sugary cereal. Daddy, are you there? You have to answer me. This place... My God. Daddy, there are bugs. I saw a roach the size of my hand on the nightstand. The sheets are stained. Preston is throwing up in the bathroom because the smell is making him sick. You have to come get us. Right now. Send the driver. Send anyone. I took a sip of my water. The ice clinked against the glass. The sound echoed down the line. Hello, Nia, I said. My voice was level. No anger, no pity, just a man conducting business. Daddy, stop this. Stop this right now. Do you have any idea what you have done? Do you know how humiliated I am? She wasn't asking for help. She was demanding restitution. She was attacking. It was her defense mechanism. When she felt small, she tried to make everyone else feel smaller. You ruined everything, she screamed, her voice cracking. Mrs. Sterling, she was looking at me like I was trash. Her friends were whispering. The Abernathys, the DuPonts. The entire elite of Atlanta saw my card get declined. They saw the manager kick us out. They saw us leave with nothing. You made me a laughingstock, Daddy. How could you be so cruel? How could you be so heartless? I listened to her rant. I listened to her talk about the elite and the DuPonts as if their opinions were oxygen. She didn't mention that she had hurt me. She didn't mention that she had erased me. She only cared that her mask had slipped. Are you finished? I asked when she finally paused to take a breath. No, I am not finished. I want my money back. I want my house. You stole my wedding gifts. You stole my life. I leaned forward in the chair. The leather creaked. Let me correct you on a few things I said. First, I didn't steal anything. I repossessed my property. There is a difference. Second, you are asking the wrong questions. You are asking why I did this. You should be asking yourself why you thought you could treat a man like a dog and still expect him to feed you. I am your daughter, she wailed. That is supposed to mean something. Unconditional love. Daddy parents are supposed to love their children no matter what. I closed my eyes. That was the knife. That was the weapon she had used for years, using my love as a shield while she stabbed me. Love is unconditional, Nia, I said softly. Funding is not. Respect is not. I love you enough to let you learn a hard lesson. I love you enough to stop crippling you with my wallet. But right now, I don't like you very much. She went silent for a second, stunned by the rejection. Then the anger returned hotter than before. You are just a bitter old man. Preston was right. You are jealous. You are jealous that we are moving up in the world. You are jealous that we fit in with people you used to drive trucks for. You are trying to drag us back down to the gutter because you can't stand to see us shine. I looked at the photo on my desk. It was me and Coretta standing in front of our first truck. We were covered in grease, tired but smiling. That was shining. That was real. Preston is throwing up in a motel bathroom, Nia, I said. That doesn't look like shining to me. That looks like the gutter you were so afraid of. Daddy, send the money. Just transfer $5,000, that is all I ask. Just enough to get a decent hotel and some clothes. Please, I am begging you. Look, I am sorry, okay, I am sorry I didn't let you walk me down the aisle. I am sorry about the gate. Is that what you want to hear? Are you happy now? You got your apology. Now pay up. It wasn't an apology. It was an invoice. She was trying to buy her way out of the hole with words she didn't mean. I gripped the phone tighter. "You have the wrong number, ma'am," I said. "What? What are you talking about?" "It is me. Nia." "No," I said. "My Nia. The daughter I raised. She had dignity. She had pride. She knew the value of $1 and the value of family. The woman on this phone, the woman who bans her father from her wedding because he is too black, too working class, too ugly for her pictures, I don't know her. Daddy, stop playing games. I don't have a daughter named Shame," I said, my voice dropping to a growl. "I don't have a daughter who treats people like accessories. You told me at the gate that I was a stranger to your world. You told me I didn't belong. You evicted me from your life, Nia. But you fired me as a father. I cut her off. You wanted the aesthetic of the Sterlings. You wanted the prestige. Fine, you have it. Go ask William Sterling for $5,000. Go ask Evelyn. Go ask your real family. They don't have it," she screamed. "You know they don't have it." "Then I guess you are all in the same boat," I said. "You are sinking together. Isn't that romantic?" I heard a rustling sound on the other end. Then a man's voice. "Preston." He must have snatched the phone from her. "Listen here, you old psychopath," Preston shouted. His voice was slurring. He was drunk. "I am going to sue you for every dime you have. I am going to have you declared incompetent. I am going to take your company, your house, your truck. I am going to leave you rotting in a state home. Do you hear me? You can't do this to a Sterling." I laughed. It was a genuine laugh this time. The laugh of a man watching a chihuahua bark at a tank. "Preston, son," I said, "you couldn't take a candy bar from a baby right now. You are holding a motel phone in a room that costs $40 a night. You are wearing a tuxedo you can't return because you probably stained it with vomit. You are not a threat. You are a punchline. I give you my word." Preston continued, ignoring me. "I will destroy you." "Put Nia back on," I said. There was a scuffle. I heard Nia sobbing in the background. Then her breathing came back on the line. "Daddy," she whispered, he is just stressed. He doesn't mean it. He means it, Nia," I said. "And so do you. That is the tragedy. You both think you are entitled to the world without lifting a finger. But let me tell you where you are right now. You are standing in the wreckage of your own choices. Daddy, please. I am living in my truth now." "Nia," I said, "you told me to go away. You told me I was a stranger. So I am honoring your wishes. I am acting like a stranger. And strangers don't pay your bills. Strangers don't rescue you when you burn your bridges. Strangers don't care if you sleep on dirty sheets. Daddy, good night." "Mrs. Sterling," I said. I pulled the phone away from my ear. I could still hear her screaming my name, a tiny, tinny sound coming from the receiver. I pressed the button. The line went dead. The dial tone hummed in the silence of the room. I sat there for a long time, staring at the phone. My hand was shaking again. It hurt. God, it hurt. It felt like I had just cut off my own arm. But I knew the gangrene had set in long ago. If I didn't cut it off now, the poison would have killed me. Nia wasn't the little girl in pigtails anymore. She was a woman who had made a choice. She chose the lie. She chose the image. And now she had to live inside the frame she had built. I stood up and walked to the window. The streetlights of Atlanta were blurry through my tears. I wiped them away with the back of my hand. She realized tonight that I wasn't just a checkbook. She realized I wasn't a senile old man she could pat on the head and hide in the corner. She realized that Isaiah King was a force of nature, but she realized it too late. I turned off the lamp. I walked out of the den and climbed the stairs to my bedroom. The house was empty, but it felt cleaner than it had in years. The air was lighter. The war was on. They were going to come for me. Preston, Evelyn, maybe even Nia. They were going to try to take what was mine. They were going to try to prove I was crazy. Let them come. I built an empire from a single van. I fought unions, competitors, and Jim Crow laws in this state, a couple of broke social climbers and an ungrateful child. They didn't stand a chance. I laid down in the bed I used to share with Coretta. I whispered a prayer to her. "I am sorry, baby," I said to the darkness. I had to do it. I had to let her fall so she could learn how to stand. I closed my eyes. Tomorrow was Monday, and on Monday I had a meeting with a private investigator. If they wanted to play dirty, I was going to show them what mud really looked like. The ceiling fan in the Starlight Motel room wobbled on its axis, making a rhythmic click-click-click sound that was driving Preston Sterling insane. He lay on the lumpy mattress, staring up at the water stains spreading across the drywall like a map of a country he didn't want to visit. The air conditioner rattled in the window, struggling against the Georgia heat and losing badly. The room smelled of mildew and cheap lemon cleaner, a scent that now coated the back of his throat. Next to him, Naya was finally asleep, curled into a tight ball, her tear-streaked face buried in a scratchy pillow. She was wearing one of his t-shirts because her silk pajamas were still in a black trash bag somewhere in the corner. Preston sat up. He grabbed the bottle of cheap whiskey he had bought from the liquor store down the road with the last of his cash. He took a swig. It tasted like gasoline compared to the single malt he was supposed to be drinking right now. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was his mother. "Evelyn," he answered, his voice rough. "Preston, darling." Her voice was sharp, urgent. "Where are you? I've been calling for hours. Did you get into the penthouse?" "No, Mother," Preston hissed, careful not to wake Nia. "We are in a motel, a roach motel. He locked us out. He locked us out of everything." "That man is a savage," Evelyn spat. "Does he know who he is dealing with? We are Sterlings." "He doesn't care, Mother. He cut the cards. He took the house. He took the car. I am standing here in my underwear in a room that costs $40 a night, and I have exactly $12 left to my name. Calm down, Preston. Hysteria is unbecoming," Evelyn said, her voice regaining that icy composure he knew so well. "We need to think. We need to strategize. This isn't over. It's just a negotiation." "Negotiation? He told me to go to hell, Mother. He said I wasn't a threat. I was a punchline." "He is emotional," Evelyn said dismissively. "He is hurt because his little girl chose us over him. But emotions fade. Assets remain. And we need to secure those assets." "How?" Preston asked, taking another drink. "He holds all the cards, the money is his, the property is his." "Is it?" Evelyn mused. "Think, Preston. Think about what you told me last month, about how he forgot his keys at dinner, about how he sometimes repeats stories." Preston frowned. "Everyone forgets their keys, Mother. He's old." "Exactly," Evelyn said, the shark smile audible in her voice. "He is old. 72. He has worked hard his whole life. Stress, exhaustion. It takes a toll on the mind. Dementia is a tragic silent thief, Preston. It starts slowly. Erratic behavior, sudden outbursts of anger, paranoia, making rash financial decisions, like canceling a $250,000 wedding on a whim." Preston sat up straighter. The gears in his head, usually clogged with gambling odds and crypto trends, started to turn. You think we can say he's senile?" "I don't think, darling. I know," Evelyn said. "I spoke to Dr. Harris this morning. You remember him? From the club. The one who lost his license for overprescribing. He has been reinstated," Evelyn corrected quickly, "and he owes the family a favor, a significant one. I explained the situation to him. I told him about Isaiah's sudden violent mood swings, about his financial recklessness, about how he abandoned his own daughter on her wedding night. And Dr. Harris agrees that it sounds like a classic case of rapid onset dementia, possibly Alzheimer's with aggressive tendencies. He believes Isaiah is a danger to himself and others, especially to his finances." Preston looked at Naya sleeping beside him. He looked at the trash bags in the corner. He thought about the debts he owed to people who didn't use lawyers to collect. "If he is incompetent," Preston whispered. "Then he needs a guardian," Evelyn finished. "Someone to manage his estate, someone to make sure he doesn't squander his fortune on erratic impulses. And who better than his only child, his devoted daughter?" "But he has lawyers." "Mother, Marcus. He's sharp." "Marcus is a lawyer, not a doctor," Evelyn countered. "If we have a medical professional willing to sign an affidavit stating that Isaiah King lacks the mental capacity to make financial decisions, we can file for an emergency conservatorship. We can freeze his assets. We can take control Preston. For his own good, of course." Preston felt a thrill run through him. It was the same rush he got when he went all in on a pair of kings. It was risky. It was dangerous. But the pot was huge. "We need proof," Preston said. "We can't just say it." "We create the narrative," Evelyn said. "We tell everyone about the wedding, how he snapped, how he was screaming incoherently. We get witnesses, the guests. They saw the chaos. They will believe he lost his mind because the alternative is believing he did it on purpose, and no sane father would do that. Okay, Preston said, his mind racing. Okay, Dr. Aris, he will make the call. He is calling Adult Protective Services, first thing Monday morning, Evelyn said. He is filing a report of self-neglect and financial instability. Once the investigation starts, we file for emergency custody of the estate. By Friday, you could be signing checks from his account. Preston looked at the water stain on the ceiling. It didn't look like a stain anymore. It looked like a dollar sign. You are a genius, Mother. I am a survivor, Preston. And so are you. Now get some sleep. We have a busy week ahead of us. We are going to save poor Isaiah from himself. She hung up. Preston stared at the phone. A slow smile spread across his face. He wasn't broke. He was just in transition. He poured the last of the whiskey into the plastic cup from the bathroom. To family, he whispered, and downed it. Monday morning came with a vengeance. I was sitting in my office at the depot, the same office I had occupied for 40 years. It wasn't fancy. No mahogany desks or leather chairs here. Just metal filing cabinets, a calendar from a tire company on the wall, and a view of the yard where my trucks used to line up. I had sold the fleet 5 years ago, but I kept the building. I kept the office. It was my command center. It was where I felt most like myself. I was going through the foreclosure notices Marcus had sent over for the penthouse when my desk phone rang. Not my cell, the landline. The number only a few people had. King, I answered. Mr. King, this is Officer Miller from the Atlanta PD. I sat up. I knew Miller. His dad used to drive for me back in the 80s. Miller, what can I do for you? Mr. King, Look, this is awkward, Miller said, his voice hesitant. We just got a call from Adult Protective Services. They asked for a police escort for a wellness check at your residence. I frowned. A wellness check? I am fine, Miller. I am sitting at my desk drinking coffee. I know that, sir, but the report, it is serious. It claims you are suffering from severe dementia, says you are a danger to yourself, says you have been having violent episodes and giving away large sums of money. I felt the anger flare hot and sudden, but I tamped it down. Dementia, violent episodes, giving away money. Let me guess, I said, my voice cold. Did the report come from a Dr. Aris? I am not supposed to say, sir, but yeah, that is the name on the file. I laughed. A short, sharp bark. Dr. Aris, the pill pusher from Buckhead. I haven't seen a doctor in 6 months, Miller. And my doctor is Dr. Evans over at Grady. I figured as much, Mr. King. That is why I called you before we rolled out. But APS, they have to investigate. It is protocol. They are on their way to your house now. My house is empty, I said. I am here at the yard. Okay, I will redirect them to you. But Mr. King, you should probably have your lawyer present. This doctor attached a preliminary psychiatric evaluation. It looks detailed. Detailed fiction, I said. Thank you, Miller. You are a good man. You looked out for my pops when he got hurt, Mr. King. I don't forget. We will be there in 20 minutes. Just keep it cool, okay? Don't give them anything they can use. I am always cool, son. I hung up the phone. I sat there for a moment, letting the pieces fall into place. So that was their play. They couldn't bully me. They couldn't guilt me. So now they were going to try to bury me. They were going to use the system, the same system that had tried to keep men like me down for centuries, to strip me of my rights. They were going to paint me as a crazy old black man who didn't know what to do with his money, so the responsible white folks had to step in and take it. It was bold, it was vicious, and it was exactly what I expected from a Sterling. But they made one mistake. They forgot who I was. I didn't build King Logistics by being soft. I built it by knowing the roads better than anyone else. I built it by knowing where the potholes were and how to navigate around them. And I built it by making friends in low places and high places. I picked up my cell phone. I called Marcus. They are coming, I said. The dementia play. Already, Marcus asked. They are moving faster than I thought. They are desperate, I said. APS is on the way, with a police escort. I am leaving now, Marcus said. Do not say a word until I get there. And Zeke? Yeah. Call Dr. Evans. Tell him to meet us there too. Bring your full medical history. The physical you had last month, the cognitive test you took for the insurance update. Way ahead of you, I said. I am also calling the city councilman. He owes me a favor for the campaign donation last year. I think he might be interested to know that a corrupt doctor is weaponizing APS against a prominent business owner. Good, Marcus said. Let's turn this wellness check into a seminar on regret. I hung up. I called Dr. Evans. He was a busy man, but when I told him what was happening, he cleared his schedule. I will be there in 15 minutes, he said. Nobody calls my patient senile but me. Then I made one more call, to a number that wasn't in my contacts but was memorized in my head. Hello, a gruff voice answered. Big Tiny, I said. It is Zeke. Mr. Zeke, long time, what do you need? I need a little security at the yard, I said. I have some visitors coming who might need a reminder about manners. Nothing violent, just presence. Say no more, Mr. Zeke. The boys are around the corner. We will be there in 5. Tiny was 6'7" and weighed 300 pounds. He ran a private security firm that specialized in high-risk asset protection. He used to bounce at the club my cousin owned. He was the kind of man who didn't need to shout to be heard. I sat back in my chair. I looked at the calendar on the wall. Monday. They wanted a show. They wanted to prove I was incompetent. Fine, I would give them a performance. But it wasn't going to be the tragedy they wrote. It was going to be a masterclass in why you never ever try to hustle a hustler. I poured myself a cup of coffee from the thermos. Black, no sugar. Let them come. I watched through the blinds of my office window as the convoy pulled into the gravel lot of the depot. It was a parade of authority. First came the Atlanta police cruiser, lights off but presence loud. That was Miller. Behind him was a beige sedan, government-issued, looking tired and overworked. That would be Adult Protective Services. And flanking the entrance, standing like 2 gargoyles in black t-shirts, were Big Tiny and his associate, arms crossed, watching the vehicles with the kind of professional disinterest that makes people nervous. I turned away from the window and looked at my reflection in the glass of the awards cabinet. I had changed out of my work shirt. I was wearing my charcoal 3-piece suit, a crisp white shirt, and a silk tie Coretta had given me for our 40th anniversary. I didn't look like a confused geriatric. I didn't look like a victim. I looked like the man who signed the front of the checks, not the back. Dr. Evans was sitting on the leather sofa reviewing a file. Marcus was standing by the desk arranging a stack of documents with geometric precision. Showtime, I said. Marcus nodded. Remember, Zeke? You are calm, you are lucid, you are in control. Let them speak first. Let them dig the hole. There was a knock at the door. Big Tiny opened it before they could knock again. He filled the frame, looking down at the woman standing there. Mrs. Gable, Tiny rumbled. Mr. King is expecting you. A woman stepped in. She was middle-aged, wearing a sensible pantsuit and carrying a heavy briefcase. She looked exhausted, the look of a social worker who has seen too many bad situations and not enough happy endings. Officer Miller followed her in taking off his cap out of respect. Mrs. Gable stopped in the middle of the room. She looked at the mahogany desk. She looked at the wall of framed commendations from the city of Atlanta. She looked at Dr. Evans, the chief of internal medicine at Grady Hospital. And finally she looked at me. She blinked. This wasn't the scene she had been briefed on. She had been told to expect a hoarding situation, a senile old man living in squalor, shouting at clouds. Instead, she had walked into a board meeting. Mr. Isaiah King. She asked, her voice tentative. I stood up and extended my hand. My grip was firm. Good morning, ma'am. Please have a seat. Can I offer you some coffee? It is fresh. She took my hand, clearly off balance. No, thank you, sir. I am with Adult Protective Services. I assume Officer Miller explained why we are here. I sat back down, steepling my fingers. He did. You received a report concerning my welfare, allegations of dementia, financial instability, self-neglect. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a file. Yes. The report was quite detailed, Mr. King. It came from a medical professional, a Dr. Eris. It states that you have been exhibiting aggressive behavior, memory loss, and that you recently liquidated substantial assets in a manic episode. Specifically that you canceled a wedding and left your family destitute due to paranoia. I nodded slowly. Paranoia. That is a convenient word for prudence. Mrs. Gable Marcus stepped forward. I am Marcus Thorne, Mr. King's legal counsel, and this is Dr. Benjamin Evans. I believe you know his reputation, Mrs. Gable looked at Dr. Evans. I do. It is an honor, Doctor. Dr. Evans stood up. He didn't smile. He handed Mrs. Gable a thick file. This is Mr. King's complete medical history updated as of this morning, Dr. Evans said. I conducted a full physical and cognitive evaluation of Isaiah at 8 a.m. today. His blood pressure is 120/80, his heart is strong, and his score on the Montreal Cognitive Assessment was 30 out of 30, a perfect score. In my professional opinion, Isaiah King is sharper than most men half his age. The diagnosis of dementia provided by Dr. Aris is not only incorrect, it is medically negligent. In fact, I am filing a complaint with the medical board against Dr. Aris for diagnosing a patient he hasn't examined in years. Mrs. Gable flipped through the file. She looked at the test results. She looked at the dates. Her shoulders slumped. She knew she had been played. I see, she said quietly. The medical evidence is overwhelming. But Mr. King, what about the financial aspect? The report claims you are being financially exploited or are squandering your estate. The wedding cancellation. That is a massive loss of funds. I leaned forward. This was the moment. Mrs. Gable, I said, I am not the one being exploited. I am the one stopping the exploitation. Marcus slid a second file across the desk. It landed with a heavy thud. This is a record of unauthorized withdrawals from Mr. King's retirement accounts, Marcus said. $50,000 taken by his daughter Nia King under false pretenses. Here are credit card statements showing lavish spending by his future son-in-law Preston Sterling on gambling sites and luxury goods charged to Mr. King's accounts without his knowledge. I watched Mrs. Gable's eyes widen as she turned the pages. She saw the numbers, she saw the dates. And here I said, sliding a USB drive across the desk. This is a recording of a conversation between my daughter and her fiancé. It was recorded on my property. In it, they discuss having me declared incompetent specifically so they can access my liquid assets to pay off illegal gambling debts. They discuss finding a doctor who can be bought. Mrs. Gable stopped reading. She looked up at me. Her face had changed. The exhaustion was gone, replaced by a steely professional anger. APS workers hate one thing more than neglect, and that is people weaponizing their agency to abuse the elderly. They filed this report to cover their tracks, she asked. They filed it to strip me of my rights, I said. They wanted guardianship. They wanted to lock me away so they could spend my life's work on crypto and vanity. I stood up and walked around the desk. I stood next to her. Mrs. Gable, I worked for 40 years to build this. I drove trucks until my back gave out. I saved every dime. I raised that girl to be strong. But she decided she wanted to be rich instead. When I cut off the money, she tried to cut off my freedom. That is not dementia. That is a hostile takeover. Mrs. Gable closed the file. She took a deep breath. Mr. King, she said, her voice formal. Based on the evidence provided by Dr. Evans and your legal counsel, I am closing the investigation into your alleged incapacity immediately. You are clearly competent and in no danger of self-neglect. Thank you, I said. However, she continued pulling out a fresh form from her briefcase. Based on the financial records and the evidence of coercion you have provided, I am opening a new case file today. I raised an eyebrow. A new case? Yes, she said. Against Nia King and Preston Sterling. For elder financial abuse and exploitation. In the state of Georgia, this is a felony. Attempting to use the legal system to defraud a senior citizen is a crime, Mr. King, and using a fraudulent medical report to initiate an APS investigation is a crime. I looked at Marcus. He gave me a barely perceptible nod. This was the turn. You want to investigate them, I asked. I am required to, Mrs. Gable said. You are a vulnerable adult under the statute, Mr. King, by virtue of your age. They targeted you. They stole from you. And they tried to imprison you in the system. I don't take that lightly. I am going to forward this file to the District Attorney's Special Crimes Unit. She stood up. She looked at Officer Miller. Officer, I need you to sign this as a witness to the documents provided. We are going to need to interview the subjects. Officer Miller stepped forward, pen in hand. It would be my pleasure, ma'am. Mrs. Gable turned back to me. Mr. King, I am sorry you had to go through this. It is despicable, but you are safe now. We will handle this. I shook her hand again. Thank you, Mrs. Gable. I appreciate you doing your job. She gathered her files. She looked at the USB drive in her hand. If this recording is what you say it is, she said, they are not just looking at civil suits. They are looking at prison time. She walked out of the office, her heels clicking on the linoleum. Officer Miller followed her, giving me a salute on the way out. Big Tiny closed the door behind them. The room was silent again. Marcus let out a long breath. Remind me never to play poker with you, Zeke. You just turned a defense into an indictment in 20 minutes. I didn't smile. I walked back to the window. I looked out at the yard. They wanted the system, Marcus. They wanted the state to get involved. Well, they got their wish. The state is involved now. Is this what you wanted? Dr. Evans asked, packing up his stethoscope. To send your daughter to jail? No, I said softly. I wanted to walk her down the aisle. I wanted to hold my grandchildren. I wanted to leave her a legacy. But she didn't want the legacy, Ben. She wanted the loot. And she was willing to bury me to get it. I turned back to them. Nia thinks this is a game. She thinks she can cry to her mother-in-law and make it go away. She doesn't know that Mrs. Gable isn't a mother-in-law. She is a hammer. Marcus picked up his briefcase. What is the next move, Zeke? I checked my watch. It was noon. The next move is finding out who Preston really is, I said. I have a meeting with a private investigator in an hour. If he is desperate enough to try to commit me, he is hiding something bigger than gambling debts. Men like that always have a skeleton in the closet. I want to find the bones, Marcus. I want to find every single bone. I grabbed my jacket. The morning victory didn't feel like a triumph. It felt like survival. I had kept my freedom, but I had confirmed my worst fear. My daughter wasn't just ungrateful, she was dangerous, and now I had to treat her like any other threat to the business. I had to neutralize her. I walked out of the office past Big Tiny, past the empty parking spot where the APS car used to be. The sun was high and hot. It was a good day for hunting. I sat in a booth at a Waffle House off the highway, far away from the prying eyes of Buckhead. Across from me sat JT, a private investigator I had used back in the days when hijackings were a common threat to my trucks. JT was a man who could find a needle in a haystack and then tell you who manufactured the needle and how much they paid for the steel. He didn't look like much, just a guy in a windbreaker eating hash browns, but he held the keys to the kingdom in a manila folder next to his coffee cup. I had hired him 2 days ago, right after the wedding imploded. I needed to know who I was dealing with. I needed to know if Preston Sterling was just a spoiled brat with a gambling problem or if he was something worse. JT pushed the folder across the sticky table. He didn't smile. That was bad. JT usually smiled when he caught a cheater or found a hidden bank account. His face was grim, like an undertaker viewing a particularly messy body. "You aren't going to like this, Zeke," he said quietly. I picked up my coffee. Try me. I have had a hell of a week. I don't think anything can surprise me now. JT tapped the folder. The Sterlings, the old money, the aristocracy of Atlanta. It is all smoke, Zeke. It is a mirage. I opened the file. The first document wasn't a deed or a trust fund statement. It was a bankruptcy filing. Chapter 7, dated 10 years ago. They are broke, I asked. Broke doesn't even cover it, JT said. They are destitute. The father, William Sterling Sr. He blew the family fortune on bad real estate deals in '08. He died of a heart attack a year later, leaving Evelyn with nothing but debts and a leased Mercedes. They lost the estate in Savannah. They lost the summer home. The only reason they are still in that house in Buckhead is because of a legal loophole in the foreclosure process that has kept the bank from evicting them for 5 years. They haven't paid a mortgage payment since Obama was in office. I stared at the paper. I thought about Mrs. Sterling looking down her nose at me. I thought about her speech at the wedding talking about liquidity and cultural understandings. She wasn't protecting her status. She was protecting her survival. So they are living on credit, I asked. They are living on other people's credit, JT corrected. That is where it gets ugly, Zeke. Turn the page. I flipped the page. There were photos of 2 young women. They looked a lot like Naya. Professional, polished, successful. Who are they? That is Sarah from Charleston and Emily from Birmingham, JT said. Preston's ex-fiancés. Ex-fiancés. Nia told me Preston had never been engaged. She said he was waiting for the right one. He was waiting for the right bank account, JT said bluntly. He was engaged to Sarah 3 years ago. Her daddy owned a chain of car dealerships. Preston charmed her, moved into her condo, drove her cars. 6 months later, the engagement ended. Sarah filed for bankruptcy a month after that. Preston had run up $200,000 on her cards and convinced her to invest in a tech startup that didn't exist. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. And Emily, same story, JT said. Her father was a surgeon. Preston got her to co-sign a loan for a business venture. He vanished with the cash 2 weeks before the wedding. The family is still paying it off. I looked at the photos of these women. They were smiling, happy, oblivious, just like Nia had been. This isn't just a bad boyfriend, Zeke JT said, leaning in. This is a business model. The Sterlings are grifters, professional con artists. Evelyn is the architect and Preston is the bait. They target women from wealthy families, preferably new money families who want to buy into that old South prestige. They dazzle them with the name, the Manners, the country club memberships that they probably haven't paid for in years. They get access to the accounts, they drain them dry, and then they move on to the next mark. Naya is number 3, I whispered. Nia is the whale, JT said. They did their homework, Zeke. They knew you sold King Logistics. They knew you were sitting on a mountain of cash. They knew Nia was your only child. They weren't marrying her. They were acquiring her. That $50,000 Nia stole, that wasn't for gambling debts, Zeke. That was their operating capital. That was money to pay the lease on the Porsche, to pay the minimums on Evelyn's credit cards, to keep the lights on in that foreclosure mansion so they could keep up the charade until the marriage license was signed. Once that ink was dry, they would have had legal access to everything. They would have picked you clean. I closed the folder. My hand was shaking, but not from anger this time. It was shaking from a deep hollow ache in my chest. I wasn't hurting for the money. I could lose $50,000 and make it back in a week. I wasn't hurting because I had been tricked. I was a businessman. I knew how to spot a bad deal eventually. I was hurting for Nia, my daughter, the girl I raised to be strong, the girl I sent to the best schools so she would be smart, the girl I taught to value character over cash. She had looked at Preston Sterling, a man with no job, no honor, and no money, and she had seen a prince. Why? Because he was white, because he had a last name that sounded like a bank, because he knew which fork to use at dinner. She was so desperate to escape me. She was so desperate to scrub away the scent of diesel fuel and hard work that clung to our name. She wanted the fairy tale so badly that she walked right into a wolf's den and laid down her head. She traded a father who would die for her for a husband who was just waiting to bleed her dry. She looked at me, a man who built an empire from dirt, and saw embarrassment. She looked at Preston, a leech and a loafer, and saw a future. That is what broke me. Not the fraud, the foolishness, the absolute blinding self-hatred that made her an easy mark for 2 broke social climbers. Does she know I asked, JT? Does she have any idea I don't think so? JT said. The con only works if the mark believes the dream. If she knew they were broke, the illusion would shatter. She thinks he is just having a liquidity crisis. She thinks he is temporarily embarrassed. She doesn't know he is permanently destitute. I looked out the window of the Waffle House. Cars were rushing by on the interstate, people going places, chasing dreams. She called me last night, I said quietly. She was crying. She was begging for money. She blamed me. She said I ruined her life. You saved her life, Zeke JT said firmly. If that wedding had happened, if you had signed over that house, if you hadn't frozen those accounts, by this time next year Nia would be bankrupt. You didn't ruin her life. You stopped a robbery in progress. But she doesn't see it that way, I said. She thinks I am the villain. She thinks I am the angry black father who couldn't stand to see his daughter marry up. She doesn't know she was marrying down. Way down. What do you want to do? JT asked. We have enough here for a criminal investigation. Fraud, identity theft, conspiracy. You could go to the cops. I thought about it. I thought about seeing Preston in handcuffs. I thought about Evelyn Sterling's mugshot. It would be satisfying. It would be justice. But it wouldn't save Nia. Not really. If I arrested them now, she would just see me as the tyrant. She would think I destroyed her happiness out of spite. She would visit Preston in prison and think he was a martyr. She needed to see the rot for herself. She needed to smell it. No cops yet, I said. Not yet. Then what I need her to wake up, I said. I need her to see him without the mask. I need her to realize that the aesthetic she loves so much is just cheap paint over a crumbling wall. I opened the folder again. I looked at the bankruptcy filing. I looked at the list of debts. Make me copies, I said. Digital and hard copies. I want everything, every credit report, every foreclosure notice, every statement from the other victims. You got it, JT said. I pulled a roll of cash out of my pocket and laid it on the table. It was more than the invoice, but JT was worth it. Keep digging, I said. Find out where the money went. The 50,000. I want to know exactly whose pocket it landed in. I bet you $100 it went to a lawyer or a shark, JT said, pocketing the cash. I stood up. I felt heavy old. The anger was still there, burning hot and low, but it was mixed with a profound grief. I had lost my daughter twice. First to her own vanity, and now to a predator. I have to go, JT. I have a meeting with a ghost. A ghost? Yeah, I said. My daughter, the one who used to love me. I need to find out if she's still in there somewhere, buried under all that Sterling nonsense. I walked out of the diner. The sun was bright, too bright for the darkness I felt. I got into my truck. I looked at the empty passenger seat where the deed used to be. Nia was alone now. She was in a motel room with a man who viewed her as a payday. She was scared, she was humiliated, and she was broke. It was the perfect time for a family reunion, but not the kind she wanted. I wasn't coming with a checkbook. I was coming with a mirror, and I was going to force her to look into it until she saw the fool staring back. I started the engine. The rumble of the truck was the only honest thing in my life right now. I put it in gear. Preston Sterling wanted to play games with my money fine. I was about to show him what happens when you try to hustle the bank. The bank forecloses, and the bank takes everything. Tuesday morning came with a gray sky and a humidity that stuck to your skin like a bad memory. I was sitting in my office at the depot reviewing the maintenance logs for the few trucks I still kept for contract work when the gate buzzer sounded. Big Tiny, my head of security, buzzed me on the intercom. "Mr. Zeke," he said, his voice low. "You have a visitor. It is the groom." I looked at the security monitor. There, standing at the chain-link fence, looking like a man who had slept in his car, was Preston Sterling. His suit was wrinkled. His hair, usually slicked back with expensive product, was dull and messy. He looked like a man who had lost everything which, thanks to me, he had. "Let him in," I said. "But Tiny, keep an eye on him." I sat back in my chair and waited. I didn't stand up when he walked in. I didn't offer him water. I just watched him. Preston closed the door behind him. He stood there for a moment, wringing his hands. He looked around the office, his eyes darting from the filing cabinets to the safe in the corner. He was assessing the room, looking for value, looking for an angle. "A grifter never stops working even when he is drowning, Mr. King." He started, his voice cracking. "Isaiah, can I call you Isaiah?" "You can call me Mr. King," I said. "What do you want, Preston?" He took a step forward, and then, to my absolute disgust, he dropped to his knees, right there on the linoleum floor that had seen more honest mud and grease than he would ever know. He fell to his knees and buried his face in his hands. "I am so sorry," he sobbed. "It was a performance. I have seen better acting in insurance fraud cases, but he was committed to the bit. I am a broken man, Mr. King. I ruined everything. I let my pride get in the way. I let my mother get in the way. I love Nia. I love her more than anything, and I hurt her father. I can never forgive myself." I watched him cry for a solid minute. I didn't feel pity. I felt the same way I feel when I see a rat caught in a trap. It is ugly, but it is necessary. "Get up, Preston," I said. "You are ruining your pants. And I know for a fact you can't afford to dry clean them right now." He sniffled and slowly got to his feet. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. He looked at me with what he probably thought was a look of humble determination. "You are right, sir. You are right about everything. I have been lost. But I want to make it right. I don't want your charity. I don't want a handout. I want to earn your respect back." I raised an eyebrow. "And how do you plan to do that, Preston?" He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. It was thick bound with a plastic clip. He smoothed it out on my desk. "I have an opportunity," he said, his voice shifting. The tears were gone. The salesman was back. A chance to rebuild. Not just for me, but for Nia. To give her the life she deserves, but doing it the right way. Through investment, through work. I looked at the cover sheet. Sterling Heights, luxury condominiums, a vision for tomorrow. "What is this?" I asked. "It is a development project," Preston said, his eyes lighting up with the fever of the pitch. "Prime real estate in Savannah. I have the permits. I have the architectural renderings. It is shovel-ready, Mr. King. All I need is the seed capital. The banks, well, you know how banks are right now. They don't have vision. But you built an empire. You have vision. I opened the prospectus. I flipped through the pages. It looked professional. Glossy photos. Charts showing projected returns of 20%. It looked like a gold mine. But I knew better. I knew Savannah real estate, and I knew JT, my private investigator, had already run a check on every asset the Sterlings claimed to own. This land, I said, tapping a map. The Sterling family owns this. It has been in the trust for generations. Preston lied without blinking. We are finally ready to develop it. But we have a liquidity issue, as you know. I need a partner, a silent partner, someone to put up the initial $50,000 for the groundbreaking. $50,000, the exact amount Nia had stolen from me, the exact amount they needed to pay off the loan sharks who were breathing down his neck. So you want me to invest $50,000 in a project run by the man who tried to commit me to a nursing home 3 days ago, I asked. Preston flinched. That was my mother. She was misguided. She thought you were sick. I tried to stop her. I swear. That is why I am here. To make amends. To show you I can build something real. If you help me with this, I can pay you back triple in a year. I can buy Nia a house with my own money. I can be the son-in-law you wanted. I looked at him. I saw the desperation sweating out of his pores. He wasn't building condos. He was building a coffin for his problems, and he wanted me to pay for the nails. I knew the land in the photos. It wasn't buildable. It was swampland, protected wetlands. And the Sterlings didn't own it. It had been foreclosed on 5 years ago. This entire binder was a fabrication, a Ponzi scheme printed on high-gloss paper. It was a federal crime, wire fraud, securities fraud. And he was pitching it to me in my office. I closed the binder. I leaned back and let out a long sigh. I rubbed my temples as if I were conflicted, as if the father in me was warring with the businessman. Preston, I said slowly, you hurt me. You hurt me bad. I know, sir, I know. But Nia, she loves you. God help me, she loves you. And if this project is real, if this can truly set you up for life, it is real, Preston said, leaning in, smelling the blood in the water. It is a sure thing. I just need the startup cash. I opened my desk drawer. I pulled out my checkbook, the big business ledger. Preston's eyes locked onto it. He stopped breathing. 50,000, I said. That is a lot of money, son. It is an investment, sir. It is the future. I uncapped my pen. I hesitated. If I do this, if I write this check, I want your word. No more games, no more lies. You take this money, you build this project, and you treat my daughter like a queen. I swear it, Preston said, on my life, on the Sterling name, the name that was worth less than the ink on the paper. I wrote the date. I wrote Preston Sterling on the payee line. I wrote $50,000 and 00100. In the memo line, I wrote Investment Capital, Sterling Heights. I tore the check out of the book. The sound was loud in the quiet office. I held it out. Preston reached for it. His hand was shaking. He snatched it from my fingers like a starving dog snatching a bone. He looked at the numbers. He looked at my signature. A look of pure, unadulterated relief washed over him, followed quickly by a flash of triumph. He thought he had done it. He thought he had hustled the old man one last time. Thank you, Isaiah. Thank you. You won't regret this. I hope not, Preston, I said. For Nia's sake. He backed away, clutching the check to his chest. I have to go. I have to get this to the contractors. To start the work. Go, I said. Build your future. He turned and practically ran out of the office. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't shake my hand. He just ran with the money. I waited until I heard the front door close. I waited until I saw him sprinting across the parking lot to his rental car. Then I picked up my phone. I didn't call Marcus. I dialed a number with a 202 area code, Washington, D.C., specifically the Financial Crimes Division of the FBI. Agent Miller, I said when the line clicked open. Mr. King. Did he show? He just left, I said. He pitched the swampland. He took the check, $50,000. Did you mark the memo line? Yes. Investment capital. He took it across state lines. If he deposits it in his account in South Carolina like we think he will, that triggers federal jurisdiction. And the documents Agent Miller asked. I have the prospectus right here, I said, tapping the glossy binder. Fake deeds, fake environmental reports. It is a textbook Ponzi scheme. He is soliciting investment for a property he doesn't own to pay off personal debts. Excellent, Miller said. We have been tracking the Sterling family's financial irregularities for months, but we needed a concrete transaction. We needed him to actually take the money for a fraudulent purpose. You just handed us the smoking gun. When will you pick him up? I asked. Not yet, Miller said. Let him deposit the check. Let the wire hit the bank. We want to trace where he sends it immediately after. We want to see if he pays the bookies or his mother. We want the whole network. Once that check clears, we have him on bank fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering. How long? 2 days? Maybe 3. Understood. I hung up the phone. I looked at the empty chair where Preston had kneeled. He thought he had won. He thought he had played on my emotions. He didn't realize that I had emotionally divested from him the moment he let my daughter walk away from that gate. I wasn't giving him a lifeline. I was giving him enough rope to hang himself. The check was real. The money was in the account. But the moment he touched it, the moment he moved it, he wasn't just a bad son-in-law. He was a federal case number. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out the bottle of whiskey. I didn't drink. I just looked at the amber liquid. Nia would hate me for this. When the agents kicked down their door, when they dragged Preston out in handcuffs, she would scream that I set him up. She would say I entrapped him. And she would be right, but sometimes you have to burn the field to save the farm. Preston was a disease. He was eating her future. And the only cure was to cut him out root and stem. I put the bottle back. I had work to do. I had a legacy to protect. And I had a daughter to save, even if she kicked and screamed the whole way down. Preston Sterling was going to prison, and I was going to be the one who paid for his ticket. Wednesday night arrived with a humid heaviness that clung to the air, the kind of weather that warns you a storm is brewing just over the horizon. I parked my truck in the driveway of the Sterling estate in Buckhead. It was the first time I had been invited inside the main house. Usually I was the man writing the checks from a distance or the man being turned away at the gate. But tonight was different. Tonight was the reconciliation dinner. Nia had called me the day before, her voice trembling with a mixture of hope and nerves. She said that Preston was so grateful for the investment opportunity I had given him, the rope I had given him to hang himself, though she didn't know that they wanted to celebrate. She said Mrs. Sterling wanted to properly welcome me into the family fold, to put the unpleasantness of the wedding behind us. I knew it was a lie. I knew this wasn't a peace offering. It was a victory lap. They thought they had won. They thought the $50,000 check Preston ran off with was just the beginning, the first crack in the dam before the flood of my money washed away their debts. They wanted to keep me close, keep me happy, keep the tap flowing. I checked the recorder app on my phone. It was running. I slid the phone into the breast pocket of my jacket, the microphone facing out. I wasn't here to eat. I was here to witness. I needed to see one last time if there was any part of my daughter left in that house, or if she had been completely consumed by the Sterling rot. I walked up the steps. The paint on the columns was peeling slightly near the base, covered up by strategically placed potted ferns. The old money facade was crumbling just like their bank accounts. Evelyn Sterling opened the door. She was wearing a silk caftan and enough gold jewelry to sink a small boat. Her smile was tight, stretched thin over teeth that looked too white to be real. "Isaiah," she exclaimed, extending a limp hand. "Welcome, welcome. We are so delighted you could make it. Please come in. We are just casual tonight, family style." I stepped into the foyer. It smelled of dust and expensive lilies, a funeral parlor smell. Preston came bounding down the hallway, a drink in his hand, looking manic. The check must have cleared. He looked like a man who had just bet the house on black and was waiting for the wheel to stop spinning. "Isaiah." "Good to see you, sir. Can I get you a drink? Scotch brandy?" "We have the good stuff tonight. Water is fine," I said. I walked into the dining room. Nia was there arranging napkins. She looked up when I entered. She didn't smile. She looked tired. She looked like a woman who was holding her breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. She was wearing a dress I had bought her for Christmas last year, but she had accessorized it with a pearl necklace that looked like it belonged to Evelyn. She was trying so hard to blend in to be a Sterling that she was fading into the wallpaper. "Hi, Daddy," she said softly. "Thank you for coming." I nodded at her. I didn't hug her. I couldn't. The distance between us wasn't just physical anymore, it was a canyon. We sat down. The table was set with fine china chipped on the edges if you looked closely. The silverware was tarnished. The staff Evelyn always bragged about was nowhere to be seen. The food was sitting in serving dishes on the sideboard. It looked like takeout from a high-end bistro plated to look homemade. So Evelyn began pouring herself a generous glass of wine. Preston tells me you two have come to a wonderful understanding regarding his business venture. I must say, Isaiah, I was surprised. I didn't think you had the vision for land development. I unfolded my napkin. I have vision, Mrs. Sterling. I can see things quite clearly. She laughed, a tinkling, condescending sound. Oh, I am sure you do. In your line of work. Trucking, was it? One must have good eyesight to read the road signs, I suppose. She took a sip of wine and looked at me over the rim of the glass. Her eyes were cold beads of blue glass. We were just discussing the menu, she said. I ordered something I thought you would be comfortable with. I know your palate is likely accustomed to heavier fare. Soul food isn't that what they call it, fried things. Grease. We try to eat lighter here, more refined. But I made sure there was plenty of seasoning for you. I know how your people love their spices. I sat perfectly still. The insult was wrapped in velvet, but it was a razor blade nonetheless. Your people. I looked at Nia. She was staring at her plate, pushing a piece of asparagus around with her fork. She heard it. She knew what it meant. The food is fine, Evelyn, I said evenly. Oh, good, she purred. I was worried. You know, Nia has been adapting so well to our way of life. It must have been a shock for her coming from, well, your background. But she is a quick learner. She has almost lost that accent entirely. Don't you think? She turned to Nia, smiling like an owner admiring a well-trained pet. Nia didn't look up. She just nodded. Yes, Mrs. Sterling. I felt a muscle jump in my jaw. That accent she was talking about, that was the voice of my mother. That was the voice of the neighborhood that raised her. That was the voice of home. And Nia was sitting there letting this woman erase it, letting her treat our history like a stain that needed to be bleached out. Preston chimed in, his mouth full of food. Mom is right, Isaiah. Nia fits right in. And with this new deal, with the profits from Sterling Heights, we are going to really set her up. Country club membership, the works. We are going to get her into the junior league. Of course, we might have to polish the backstory a bit. You know how those ladies are. Polish the backstory. He meant lie about me. He meant lie about who I was. And what is wrong with her backstory, I asked, my voice dropping an octave. Her father built a business from the ground up. Her father employed hundreds of people. Her mother was a queen in her community. What needs polishing? Evelyn waved her hand dismissively. Oh, Isaiah, don't be so sensitive. We aren't saying you aren't industrious. It is just, well, let's be honest. New money smells like sweat. Old money smells like linen. We just want Nia to smell like linen. She laughed again. Preston laughed with her. I looked at Nia. This was it. This was the moment. They were insulting her father, her mother, her blood right to her face. They were stripping her of her identity and laughing about it. Nia, I said. She looked up. Her eyes were wet. She looked terrified. Do you agree with this? I asked. Do you think your history needs to be polished? Do you think we smell like sweat? Nia looked at me. Then she looked at Evelyn, who was watching her with an arched eyebrow, waiting. She looked at Preston, who was drunk on my money and his own arrogance. She swallowed. Daddy, please, she whispered. Don't start an argument. Evelyn is just trying to help me fit in. It is different here. You don't understand their world. I don't understand. I asked. Or I don't belong. Both, she said, her voice barely audible. Just eat your dinner, Daddy. Please, don't ruin this for me. There it was, the final betrayal. She didn't defend me. She didn't defend herself. She sided with the vultures. She agreed that I was something to be overcome, something to be hidden, something to be tolerated for the sake of a check. She was willing to let them spit on my grave as long as they let her sit at the table. I felt the phone in my pocket. The recording was running. Every word, every insult, every silence. It was all there. The evidence wasn't for the court. It was for me. It was the proof I would need on the lonely nights ahead to remind myself why I had to do what I was about to do. I pushed my chair back. The sound was loud on the hardwood floor. I stood up. I placed my napkin on the table next to the untouched plate of refined food. Where are you going? Preston asked, his fork halfway to his mouth. We haven't had dessert. I am full, I said. I have had exactly enough. Evelyn sighed. Oh, Isaiah, don't be dramatic. We were just having a little family banter. You people are always so emotional. You people, I repeated. I looked down at her. I looked at the jewelry she was wearing, jewelry bought with debt. I looked at the house that was falling apart around her ears. Evelyn, I said, you talk about linen and sweat. Let me tell you something about sweat. Sweat dries, it washes off, but rot goes down to the bone. And this house, this family, it reeks of it. How dare you? Evelyn gasped, clutching her pearls. And you. Preston, I said, turning to the groom, enjoy the investment. Really, make it last, because it is the last dime you will ever see from me. I turned to Nia. She was crying now, silent tears running down her face, ruining the makeup she wore to please them. Nia, I said. My voice wasn't angry anymore. It was just tired. You told me to go away at the wedding because I would ruin the picture. Well, look around you, baby girl. Look at the picture you bought. You are sitting at a table with people who hate you, eating food you don't like, pretending to be someone you are not, and you are doing it alone. Daddy, she started. No, I said. Not Daddy, just a stranger, just a checkbook that finally snapped shut. I turned and walked out of the dining room. I walked down the dusty hallway past the portraits of sterling ancestors who were probably rolling in their graves looking at what their bloodline had become. I opened the front door. The night air was heavy, but it felt clean compared to the air inside. I walked to my truck. I didn't look back. I knew Nia wasn't following me. She was staying in her cage. She was staying with her owners. I got into the truck and started the engine. I pulled the phone out of my pocket and stopped the recording. I saved the file. Dinner with the Sterlings. I drove away from the mansion down the long, winding driveway. Nia had made her choice. She chose the linen, she chose the lie. Now all that was left was the fall. And I wasn't going to be there to catch her. I was going to be the one pulling the rug. The FBI was waiting for the wire to move. The bank was watching the accounts. The trap was set. I turned onto the main road. It is a shame, I thought. It really is a shame. But respect is a currency, just like I told Marcus. And Nia just went bankrupt. Thursday morning in Atlanta dawned with a humidity that made your shirt stick to your back the moment you stepped outside. But inside the climate-controlled glass tower of Merit Financial, the air was crisp, cool, and smelled of money. I rode the private elevator to the 42nd floor. I was wearing my navy bespoke suit, the one I usually saved for meetings with senators or city planners. I wasn't here to haul freight today. I was here to take out the trash. I checked my reflection in the polished steel doors of the elevator. Isaiah King, 72 years old, a man who started with a single truck and a map of Georgia. Most people didn't know that Merit Financial, one of the premier boutique investment firms in the South, had a silent partner. They didn't know that 10 years ago, when the original partners were drowning in the recession, I stepped in with a capital injection that saved the company. I owned 35% of the voting stock. I sat on the board, but I rarely attended meetings. I preferred to let the money work while I stayed in the background. But today, I was taking my seat at the head of the table. The elevator doors slid open. The receptionist, a woman who had been there for years and knew exactly who I was, stood up immediately. "Good morning, Mr. King. They are waiting for you in the boardroom." "Thank you, Sarah," I said. "Is he here yet?" She didn't need to ask who I meant. Mr. Sterling arrived 10 minutes ago. "He is in the break room getting coffee. He seems agitated." I nodded. Agitated was good. Panic was better. I walked down the long hallway lined with modern art that cost more than my first house. I could hear the low hum of conversation from the boardroom. I pushed the heavy glass doors open and stepped inside. The conversation stopped. The CEO, Arthur Banks, stood up immediately. He was a good man, a man who knew which side his bread was buttered on. The other board members followed suit. They looked surprised to see me, but respectful. They knew I didn't come downtown unless bodies were being moved. "Mr. King," Arthur said, extending his hand. "We weren't expecting you until the quarterly review. To what do we owe the honor?" I shook his hand. "I have some housekeeping to do, Arthur. Personnel matters." I walked to the head of the table, the chairman's seat. It was usually empty out of respect for the majority shareholder. Today I pulled it out and sat down. I placed a thick manila folder on the polished mahogany surface. It was the dossier JT had compiled, the autopsy of a fraud. "Bring him in," I said. Arthur nodded to his assistant. A moment later the side door opened. Preston Sterling walked in. He looked terrible. His skin was gray, his eyes were bloodshot, and he was sweating through his dress shirt. He was holding a coffee cup with both hands to keep them from shaking. He had deposited my $50,000 check yesterday, but the relief hadn't set in yet. He was still waiting for the other shoe to drop. He didn't see me at first. He was looking at Arthur, putting on that fake winning smile that used to charm the pants off debutantes. "Arthur, you wanted to see me?" Preston asked, his voice tight. "I have those projections for the quarter. I think you are going to be very pleased. The crypto market is volatile, but I have a feeling—" Then he turned. He saw the man sitting at the head of the table. He froze. The coffee cup wobbled in his hand, splashing a few drops of hot liquid onto the expensive carpet. He blinked as if he were hallucinating. He saw the father-in-law he had banned from his wedding. He saw the man he had tried to commit to a mental institution. He saw the man he thought was a gullible truck driver, sitting in the seat of power. Mr. King Preston stammered, "Isaiah, what are you doing here? Did you get lost? The service entrance is downstairs." I didn't say a word. I just looked at him. I let the silence stretch out until it was uncomfortable, until the other board members started shifting in their seats. Arthur cleared his throat. "Mr. Sterling, please sit down. Mr. King isn't lost. Mr. King is the majority shareholder of Merit Financial. He owns this building, and effectively, he owns your job." Preston's knees buckled. He literally fell into the nearest chair. His mouth opened and closed like a fish on a dock. Majority shareholder. But he is a truck driver. He drives a Ford. He drives a Ford because he chooses to, Arthur said coldly. "Now be quiet. Mr. King has the floor." I opened the folder. The sound of the paper sliding against the wood was the only sound in the room. "Hello, Preston," I said. My voice was calm, conversational. "I imagine you are surprised. You spent so much time judging me by my aesthetic that you forgot to check my portfolio." Preston was shaking his head. "This isn't real. This is a nightmare." "It is a nightmare, son," I agreed. "But it is your nightmare. I am just the alarm clock." I pulled out the first document. It was his resume. The one he had submitted to Merit Financial 6 months ago to get his job as a junior portfolio manager. "Let's talk about credentials," I said. "On your application, you stated you graduated magna cum laude from Wharton Business School. You listed internships at Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan." I looked up at him. "Preston, I have a letter here from the registrar's office at the University of Pennsylvania. They have no record of a Preston Sterling ever attending. Not for a degree, not even for a seminar." Preston's face turned the color of old milk. "I also have a response from Goldman Sachs, HR," I continued. "They have never heard of you." "He lied," Arthur whispered, looking at his own copy of the file I had distributed. "He lied on his application. That is immediate termination for cause." "We are just getting started, Arthur," I said. I pulled out the next document. It was a transaction log from the company's internal system. "Preston, you manage a small portfolio of mid-level clients, correct? Widows, retirees, people who trust this firm with their life savings." Preston didn't answer. He was staring at the table, sweat dripping from his nose. "I see here a series of unauthorized transfers," I said. "Small amounts. 2,000 here, 5,000 there. Moved from client holding accounts into a dummy corporation called Gemini Exchange," Crypto Arthur hissed. "He was gambling with client money." I nodded. "Embezzlement, wire fraud, breach of fiduciary duty. You were taking their money to try and cover your own losses in the market. You were robbing Peter to pay Paul, but Paul was a bookie in Vegas." "I didn't mean to," Preston shouted, suddenly finding his voice. "It was temporary. I was going to put it back. The market, it crashed. I just needed time." "You don't get time when you steal from grandmothers, Preston," I said. "You get 5 to 10 years in federal prison." I looked around the table. The board members were horrified. This was a reputation killer. "If this got out, Merit Financial would be ruined," Arthur, I said. "I want a full forensic audit of every account this man has touched. I want every cent returned to the clients with interest. I will cover the losses personally out of my dividends if necessary." "But this cancer, it gets cut out today." Arthur stood up. He looked at Preston with pure disgust. "You are fired, Sterling. You are banned from the securities industry. I am notifying the SEC and FINRA immediately. And you better pray we don't press criminal charges right this second. Although looking at Mr. King, I think that decision is up to him." Preston looked at me. He looked at the man he had sneered at, The man he had called embarrassing. He slid out of his chair and hit the floor again, kneeling just like he had in my office yesterday. But this time there was no acting. This was raw terror. "Isaiah, please," he begged. "Please. Don't send me to jail. I will pay it back. I have the $50,000 you gave me. I still have it. I can give it to the firm." I laughed. It was a dark, heavy sound. "You are going to give my own money back to pay for the money you stole from others. That is your plan." "It is all I have." "No," I said. "You don't even have that. Because that check, that was a trap." "Preston, I knew you would deposit it. I knew you would move it across state lines. That $50,000 isn't your salvation. It is the final nail in your coffin." Preston stared at me, his eyes wide and wet. You set me up." "I tested you," I corrected him. "And you failed. You failed as a husband. You failed as a man. And you failed as a human being." I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. "Get him out of here, Arthur. He is trespassing." 2 security guards stepped forward. They weren't gentle. They grabbed Preston by the arms and hauled him up. He was sobbing now, snot running down his face, begging for mercy, begging for Naya, begging for his mother. Wait. Does Naya know? Does she know you are doing this?" I walked over to him. I leaned in close so only he could hear. "Nia is next, Preston. You dragged her into the mud with you. Now you can watch her drown from your cell," he screamed as they dragged him out. The sound echoed down the hallway, a long, pathetic wail of a man whose entitlement had finally run out of road. The boardroom was silent. Arthur looked at me. He looked shaken. "I am sorry, Isaiah. We should have vetted him better. We saw the Sterling name and we assumed. You assumed the aesthetic was real," I said. "You assumed that a white boy in a nice suit with a fancy last name was trustworthy. And you assumed that a black man in a truck was nobody. Let this be a lesson, Arthur. Due diligence doesn't have a skin color." I picked up my folder. "I will expect that audit report by Monday," I said. "Yes, sir," Arthur said. I walked out of the boardroom. I didn't feel happy. Destroying a man, even a man like Preston, doesn't bring joy. It brings a grim satisfaction like lancing a boil. It hurts. It is messy, but the poison is gone. I took the elevator down to the lobby. I walked out into the heat of the Atlanta afternoon. The sun was shining, but for Preston Sterling, the long night had just begun. He was fired. He was blacklisted. He was exposed. But he wasn't in handcuffs yet. Not by the police anyway. I wanted him to have a few hours. I wanted him to run back to Nia. I wanted him to tell her what happened. I wanted her to see him broken, jobless, and terrified. I wanted her to see exactly what she had bought with her betrayal. I got into my truck. I checked my phone. A text from JT. "Subject 2 is live, the social media campaign. It is about to get ugly." Subject 2 was Nia. I put the truck in gear. Preston was dealt with. Now it was time to turn off the lights on my daughter's fantasy world. She wanted to be an influencer. She wanted to live for the likes. Well, she was about to go viral. But not in the way she wanted. I sat in the dark of my home office, the blue light of my tablet illuminating the creases on my hands. Hands that had steered 18-wheelers through ice storms in Minnesota and heat waves in Texas. Hands that had built a legacy. Now those same hands were hovering over a screen watching the only connection I had left to my daughter. Her Instagram page. She did not call herself Nia King anymore. That name was too common, too heavy with the history of work and struggle. Online she was Nia Sterling, the self-made heiress, the lifestyle guru, the face of modern elegance. Her bio read, entrepreneur, visionary, sterling legacy. I scrolled through her feed. There were photos of her posing in the penthouse I paid for captioned Rise and Grind. Photos of the Range Rover I leased captioned My New Baby. Photos of expensive dinners I subsidized captioned The Good Life. She had 300,000 followers, or at least the screen said she did. What Nia did not know, what she refused to believe in her arrogance, was that popularity, like everything else in her life, was a subsidized asset. It was inventory I had purchased. Every month, a credit card in my name was charged $3,000 by a digital marketing firm in Los Angeles. They were not selling a product, they were selling an illusion. They bought the likes. They wrote the flattering comments. They greased the algorithm to make sure my daughter felt special. I had done it because she said she wanted to build a brand. I thought I was investing in her business. I thought I was helping her launch. I did not realize I was paying for the bricks she used to build a wall between us. I picked up my phone. I dialed the number for the agency. A chirpy voice answered on the second ring. Digital Rise Agency, this is Chloe. How can we elevate your brand today? This is Isaiah King, I said. My voice was a low rumble like a truck idling in low gear. I am the guarantor for the Nia Sterling account. Oh, hi, Mr. King. We are seeing great numbers this month. The engagement on her wedding teaser post is through the roof. We were just about to run the Cancel it, I said. There was a pause. I am sorry, sir. You want to cancel the upcoming campaign. I want to cancel the contract, I said. Effective immediately. Stop the bots, stop the paid likes, stop the comment farming, delete the credit card from the file. Today? Sir, if we do that, the engagement metrics will plummet. The algorithm punishes sudden drop-offs. Her visibility will essentially vanish. I know how it works, Chloe, I said. Just do it. Send the final invoice to my lawyer. Okay, sir. It is done. Service terminated. I hung up. Then I waited. It did not take long. The internet moves faster than real life, and it is twice as cruel. I refreshed Nia's page. She had just posted a photo. It was her sitting in the lobby of the Starlight Motel, though she had cropped out the sign and geotagged it as Secret Getaway. She looked tired, but the caption was defiant. Sometimes you have to disconnect to reconnect. Big things coming. Hashtag Sterling Life. Hashtag Unbothered. Usually within 10 minutes, a post like that would have 5,000 likes and hundreds of comments saying Queen or goals. I watched the counter. 5 minutes passed. 12 likes. 10 minutes. 20 likes. Then the comments started. The real comments. The ones the bots usually drowned out. Wait, didn't I see a video of you getting kicked out of your wedding venue? Why are you at a motel? That carpet looks nasty. Fake. You are broke. We saw the TikTok. Where's the husband? Did he run off with the money? The protective shield I had bought for her was gone. The reality of the internet was pouring in like floodwater. I watched as she frantically deleted comments, but they were coming too fast. Her follower count started to drop. First by the hundreds, then by the thousands, as the bot accounts were purged by the system without my payment to renew them. Then came the emails. My lawyer Marcus forwarded them to me in real time. The brand partnerships, the tea detox company, the fashion line. They were all tied to my credit card for the upfront inventory costs Nia was supposed to pay back. I had canceled that card on Saturday. The subject lines were brutal. Payment declined, contract voided, immediate cessation of partnership, demand for return of merchandise. Her empire was not crumbling. It was evaporating. It never existed. It was smoke, and I had just turned on the fan. But the final blow, the one that would make the history books of family tragedy, came at 2 p.m. Nia decided to go live. She needed to control the narrative. She needed to spin the wedding disaster, the motel, the silence from her father. She needed to feed the beast that was eating her. I clicked on the notification. Nia Sterling is live. She was sitting in the driver's seat of the white Range Rover Autobiography. I knew that car well. I paid the lease every month. It was parked on the street outside the motel. The sun was shining on her face, but it couldn't hide the puffiness around her eyes. She fixed her hair in the rearview mirror. She put on that fake, bright smile that she must have learned from Evelyn Sterling. "Hey guys," she chirped, her voice a little too high, a little too brittle. "Sorry for the silence. I know there are some crazy rumors flying around. The haters are working overtime today. I just wanted to hop on and clear things up. The wedding was... well, we decided to postpone it to make it even bigger. Perfection takes time, right? And we are moving to a new spot because the penthouse just wasn't our vibe anymore. We wanted something more grounded. Lies. Layer upon layer of desperate, shiny lies. We are just taking a beat to enjoy each other." She continued, flashing the diamond ring I had bought insurance for, the insurance that was now canceled. "Preston is in a meeting right now closing a massive deal. We are so blessed." Then, in the background of the video, through the rear window of the car, I saw a truck pull up. It was a flatbed tow truck. It was big, loud, and yellow. I knew that truck. I knew the company. Apex Recovery. I had called them myself that morning. A man in a reflective vest walked into the frame. He didn't care about her live stream. He didn't care about her vibe. He tapped on the driver's side window, hard. Nia jumped. The phone shook. She rolled down the window, looking annoyed, keeping the camera focused on her face. "Excuse me," she said, her voice dripping with entitlement. "I am working. I am live. Can you give me a minute?" "Nia King?" the man asked. His voice was loud, gruff. It boomed through the phone's microphone. "It is Sterling," she corrected. "And yes, what do you want?" "I have a repossession order for this vehicle," the man said. He held up a clipboard. "Leaseholder Isaiah King has terminated the agreement and reported the vehicle as unauthorized use. You need to step out of the car, ma'am." The chat on the screen went wild. The comments flew by so fast they were a blur. Repo, "OMG, is she getting towed? Daddy cut her off. This is gold." Nia turned pale. The smile vanished. "No, you are mistaken. This is my car. My husband bought this. It is a misunderstanding." "The paperwork says Isaiah King, ma'am," the repo man said, tired of the game. "And the key fob has been disabled remotely. I need you to exit the vehicle now, or I will have to call the police for assistance." She tried to start the car. She pushed the button. Click. Nothing. I had killed the ignition from my laptop 5 minutes ago. Panic set in. Real panic. "You can't take my car," she screamed, forgetting her audience, forgetting the persona. "I have nowhere to go. My bags are in the back. My life is in here." "Grab your bags, ma'am, but the car goes." The man walked to the front of the truck. He started lowering the ramp. The sound of chains rattling was loud and harsh. It was the sound of reality crashing into fantasy. Nia scrambled out of the car. In her haste, she dropped the phone. It landed face up on the pavement. It filmed the blue Georgia sky. It filmed the tow truck hooking the chains to the axle of the Range Rover. And it filmed Nia screaming. She wasn't screaming at the driver, she was screaming at the air. She was screaming at Preston, who was nowhere to be found. She was screaming at a world that had suddenly stopped pretending she was special. "This isn't fair," she shrieked. "I am a Sterling. You can't do this." The car lifted into the air. The tires left the ground. I watched until the stream cut off. The screen went black. Live video ended. She wanted to be famous. She wanted to be seen. Well, she got her wish. She was trending. Hashtag fake heiress. Hashtag repo Nia. Hashtag daddy said no. I put the tablet down on my desk. It didn't feel like a victory. It felt like watching a building collapse in slow motion. I built that building. I paid for the steel. But she let the termites in. She let the rot take hold. I walked to the window of my office. I looked out at the yard. I saw my old trucks. They were dirty. They were dented, but they ran. They worked. They were real. Nia was walking down a road I couldn't follow anymore. She was learning that likes don't pay the rent. She was learning that filters don't fix a broken life. And she was learning that the only thing worse than being nobody is being a somebody who got caught pretending. I checked my watch. It was time to go. I had one more stop to make, one more debt to collect. The Sterlings were down. Nia was down. But there was still the matter of the mother-in-law, Evelyn Sterling. She had the loudest mouth at the wedding. She had called us those people. She had insulted my liquidity. It was time to see if she had the money to back up that mouth. I grabbed my keys. The silence in the office was heavy, but it was the silence of truth, and for the first time in years, my life was quiet. No more notifications, no more invoices, just the hum of the air conditioner and the beating of a heart that was finally healing by cutting out the infection. I walked out the door. The sun was setting on Atlanta, but for my daughter, it was just starting to get dark. The summons arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning, delivered by a process server who looked like he would rather be anywhere else. I accepted the thick envelope with a nod, closed the door of my modest home in the West End, and walked to the kitchen table. I didn't need to open it to know what it was. Marcus had warned me it was coming. Nia and Preston were suing me. They were calling it promissory estoppel and breach of fiduciary duty. Fancy words for a simple concept they claimed I had promised to support them, and by cutting them off, I had caused them irreparable harm. They were also petitioning for an early distribution of inheritance, arguing that my sudden change in financial behavior stopping the gravy train was evidence of mental decline, revisiting the failed strategy they tried with APS. I made a pot of coffee. I drank it black. Then I called Marcus. "It is here," I said. "I know," Marcus replied. "I got the copy. They are asking for $5 million Zeke, plus legal fees, plus reinstatement of the trust fund allowance. I laughed. It was a dry sound. 5 million. They really do aim high for people living in a motel. They found a lawyer, Marcus said. A guy named Fletcher. He is a bottom feeder, specializes in high-conflict family law. He works on contingency. He thinks he smells a settlement. There will be no settlement, I said. Set the court date. Zeke, are you sure litigation is ugly? It is public. They are going to drag your name through the mud. They are going to claim you are abusive, controlling, senile. They will put Nia on the stand to cry about how you abandoned her. Let them, I said. I have something for them. What do you have? I have the security tapes, I said. There was a pause on the line. Security tapes from the depot. No, I said. From the house, from 6 months ago, the day of Coretta's birthday. I didn't know you had cameras inside the house. Neither did they, I said. I installed them after I noticed things going missing, small things. Cash from my wallet, a watch, but then they took the jewelry box. Marcus went silent. He knew about the jewelry box, Coretta's jewelry box. It contained her wedding ring, her pearls, the diamond brooch I bought her when we landed the first big government contract. It was the only thing I had left of her that really mattered. You have it on tape, Marcus whispered. High definition, I said. Audio and video. They didn't just take it, Marcus. They laughed about it. Preston called it vintage junk and said they could probably get 10 grand for the stones. Jesus, Marcus breathed. Set the date, I repeated. I want them in a courtroom. I want them under oath. The courtroom was cold, sterile, and smelled of floor wax. It was 3 weeks later. The Honorable Judge Sarah Halloway presided. She was a tough woman known for her no-nonsense approach to family disputes. I sat at the defendant's table wearing my best suit. Marcus was beside me organizing his files with the precision of a surgeon. Across the aisle, Nia and Preston sat with their lawyer, Mr. Fletcher. They looked like victims. Nia was wearing a simple dress, her hair pulled back, no makeup. She looked pale, fragile. Preston was wearing a suit that fit him poorly, trying to look humble and downtrodden. It was a costume, a calculated attempt to garner sympathy. Fletcher started his opening statement. He painted a picture of a loving daughter and a hard-working son-in-law who had been promised a future, only to have it snatched away by a capricious, tyrannical father. He talked about reliance and expectations. He used words like cruelty and abandonment. Nia wiped away a tear at the perfect moment. Preston put a comforting arm around her. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar. Then it was our turn. Marcus stood up. He didn't pace. He didn't shout. He simply walked to the podium. Your Honor, Marcus said. The plaintiffs claim that Mr. King owes them a lifestyle. They claim he promised to support them indefinitely. They claim his decision to stop funding their extravagance is a breach of contract. But the defense will show that this is not a contract dispute. This is a robbery in progress. Fletcher jumped up. Objection, character assassination. Overruled, Judge Halloway said, peering over her glasses. Proceed, Mr. Thorne. Thank you, Your Honor. We have one piece of evidence to present today. It addresses the character of the plaintiffs and the true nature of their relationship with the defendant. With the court's permission, I would like to play a video file. Marcus connected his laptop to the courtroom's AV system. The large screen on the wall flickered to life. The timestamp read October 14th, 2:00 p.m. The image was clear. It was the master bedroom of my house. My house in the West End, the one I still lived in. The bed was neatly made. Coretta's vanity table stood in the corner covered in her perfume bottles and framed photos. The door opened. Nia and Preston walked in. They weren't visiting. They were prowling. Hurry up, Preston said on the video. His voice was crisp. He said he'd be at the depot until 5. I feel sick, Nia said. She looked nervous, but she didn't stop. She walked straight to the closet. Don't be dramatic, Preston scoffed. It is just sitting there collecting dust. He never looks at it. By the time he notices it is gone, we will have pawned it and replaced it with costume jewelry. He won't know the difference. He doesn't know quality. Nia reached up to the top shelf. She pulled down the mahogany box, Coretta's box. She opened it. The diamonds sparkled in the afternoon sun coming through the window. God, this is tacky. Preston said, picking up the brooch. Look at that setting. It is so dated. It was Mom's favorite, Nia whispered. It is worth $5,000 easy, Preston said. That covers the catering deposit. Put it in the bag. Nia hesitated. For a second, just a second, I saw her hand tremble. I saw her look at the photo of her mother on the vanity. Do it, Nia, Preston snapped. Do you want the wedding or not? Do you want the life or not? Nia closed her eyes. She took a deep breath. Then she dumped the contents of the box into her purse. The sound of the gold chains clinking together was loud in the quiet courtroom. Let's go, she said. Her voice was flat. Before he comes back. They walked out. The screen went black. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. It was a physical weight pressing down on everyone. I looked at Nia. Her face was gray. She was staring at the blank screen, her mouth slightly open as if she couldn't believe what she had just seen. She had forgotten, or maybe she had suppressed it. She had convinced herself that she was the victim, that she was entitled to it. Preston was gripping the table, his knuckles white. He knew exactly what this meant. Judge Holloway slowly turned her head to look at the plaintiff's table. Her face was a mask of cold fury. Mr. Fletcher, she said, her voice dangerously quiet. Is that your client on the screen? Fletcher was sweating. He was loosening his tie. Your Honor, I was not aware of this evidence. This video, it lacks context. Context, Judge Holloway snapped. The context is grand larceny. The context is burglary. I just watched 2 people rob a senior citizen's home. She turned to the bailiff. Deputy, lock the doors. Panic erupted at the plaintiff's table. Preston stood up looking like he wanted to run. Nia grabbed his arm, sobbing. It wasn't like that, she screamed. We were going to pay him back. It was a loan. Sit down. The deputy barked, his hand on his holster. Judge Holloway banged her gavel. It sounded like a gunshot. This civil trial is hereby dismissed with prejudice, she ruled. Furthermore, I am holding the plaintiffs Nia King and Preston Sterling in contempt, and I am referring this matter immediately to the District Attorney's Office for criminal prosecution. She looked at Marcus. Mr. Thorne, please provide a copy of that video to the bailiff, and Mr. King. She looked at me. Her eyes softened just a fraction. I am sorry you had to see that, sir. No father should have to see that. I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. Thank you, Your Honor. I needed to see it. I needed to be sure. The bailiff moved toward the table. He pulled out his handcuffs. Nia King, Preston Sterling, you are under arrest for grand larceny, burglary, and elder abuse. No, Nia shrieked. Daddy, Daddy, help me. Tell them it was a gift. Tell them you gave it to me, please. I looked at her. I looked at the daughter who stole her dead mother's rings to pay for a party. I looked at the woman who called my love tacky. I didn't say a word. I just turned my back. I walked out of the courtroom. I heard the click of the handcuffs. I heard Preston shouting threats. I heard Nia wailing, but I kept walking. I walked out into the hallway past the stunned onlookers. I walked out of the courthouse and into the bright, blinding sun. Coretta's jewelry was gone. I would never get it back. They had pawned it just like they said. But I had gotten something else back. I had gotten the truth. And the truth was the only thing that could set me free. They wanted an inheritance. They just got one. A criminal record. It was over. The Civil War was done. Now it was just a matter of sentencing. I pulled my truck up the long, winding driveway of the Sterling estate in Buckhead for the second time that week. The first time I had been a guest, insulted and mocked over a plate of cold food. This time I was the owner. The house looked different in the harsh light of the afternoon sun. Without the cover of night and the distraction of my own anger, I could see the cracks in the facade. The ivy climbing the brick walls wasn't decorative. It was overgrown, choking the gutters. The grass was patchy brown in spots where the sprinklers had failed. The grand fountain in the center of the circular drive was dry, its bottom filled with dead leaves and trash. It was a monument to decay. It was a tomb for a legacy that had died years ago, kept alive only by the stubborn pride of a woman who refused to read the writing on the wall. I turned off the engine. I picked up the large envelope from the passenger seat. It was heavy, thick with the weight of legal judgments and bank transfers. Marcus had worked overtime to make this happen. He had called in favors at the bank holding the Sterling mortgage. It turned out the bank was tired of the Sterlings too. They were tired of the late payments, the excuses, the legal maneuvers to stall foreclosure. When I offered to buy the distressed note for cash, fully closing out their bad debt, the bank manager almost hugged me over the phone. I owned the paper, which meant I owned the dirt, which meant I owned the roof over Evelyn Sterling's head. I walked up the steps. I didn't knock. I rang the bell, a long, insistent press. It took a while for the door to open. When it did, Evelyn stood there. She looked nothing like the queen who had held court at the wedding. Her hair was unwashed, pulled back in a messy bun. She was wearing a silk robe that had seen better days, and her face was devoid of makeup. The lines around her mouth were deep-etched by panic and sleepless nights. She looked at me, and for a second confusion clouded her eyes. Then a flicker of hope. "Isaiah," she breathed. "Oh, thank God. You heard about Preston." She opened the door wider, stepping back to let me in. She thought I was there to help. She thought that despite everything, the bond of family would compel me to open my wallet and save her son from the consequences of his crimes. I stepped into the foyer. It was darker than I remembered. The air was stale. I noticed empty spots on the walls where paintings used to hang. She had been selling things, selling off the history she was so proud of, piece by piece, just to keep the lights on. "Please come in," she said, her voice trembling. I apologize for my appearance. It has been a nightmare. The FBI, they took him, Isaiah. They took my boy. They came in here like stormtroopers at 6 in the morning. They put him in handcuffs. They dragged him out like a common criminal. She led me into the sitting room. It was mostly empty now. The Persian rug was gone. The silver tea service was gone. Just 2 armchairs and a side table remained. "We need a lawyer, Isaiah," she said, turning to me, wringing her hands. "A real lawyer, not these public defenders. Preston is fragile. He can't survive in jail. He needs bail money. I know we have had our differences. I know things were said at dinner. But we are family. Nia, she is my daughter-in-law. We are connected by blood now, or by marriage. It is the same thing in the eyes of God." I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had sneered at my accent, the woman who had called my presence a complication, the woman who had tried to have me committed to a mental ward so she could steal my life's work. "We are not family, Evelyn," I said. My voice was low, echoing in the empty room. She flinched. "I know you are angry. You have every right to be. We were arrogant. We were stressed. But think of the children. Think of the future. If Preston goes to prison—" "He is going to prison, Evelyn," I interrupted. "That is a fact. The evidence is overwhelming. He stole from my company. He stole from his clients. He stole from me. There is no lawyer in Georgia who can save him." She stared at me, her eyes widening. "Then why are you here?" I lifted the envelope. "I am not here for Preston," I said. "I am here for the house." She frowned. "The house? What do you mean?" I bought the note, Evelyn. "Your mortgage. The one you haven't paid in 5 years. The bank sold it to me yesterday." She took a step back, her hand going to her throat. You bought my mortgage?" I nodded. "I am the bank now, and I am foreclosing." "No," she whispered. "No, you can't. This is the Sterling estate. My husband's grandfather built this house." "Your husband's grandfather is dead," I said, "and your husband lost the fortune. You have been squatting here living on the bank's charity and the money your son stole from women. But the charity is over." I pulled out the document. It was a notice to quit, an eviction order. "You have 24 hours, I said. 24 hours, she shrieked. "That is illegal. You have to give me 30 days. I have rights." "Not with this type of foreclosure," I said. Marcus found the clause. "It is a distress sale. The property has been deemed abandoned due to lack of maintenance and payment. You are a liability, Evelyn, and I am liquidating the asset." She fell into one of the armchairs. She looked small. She looked old. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a terrified realization that the world she thought was solid was actually made of smoke. "Isaiah, please," she begged, tears streaming down her face. "I have nowhere to go. I have no money." "They froze the accounts. They took the cars. If you throw me out, I will be on the street. I am an old woman." I looked at her. I thought about the nursing home she wanted to put me in. I thought about the doctors she called to lie about my mind. I thought about her laughing at the wedding while my daughter cried. You should have thought about that before you came for me, I said. She looked up, her eyes flashing with a sudden desperate anger. How can you be so cruel? She spat. You people, you talk about mercy, about church, about community, but when you get a little power, you are just as ruthless as anyone else. You don't belong in this house, Isaiah. You never will. This is a house of history. I walked over to her. I loomed over the chair. I didn't shout. I didn't raise a hand. I just let my presence fill the room. You want to talk about history? I asked. My grandfather built houses like this. He laid the bricks. He cut the timber. He wasn't allowed to walk through the front door. He had to use the servants' entrance. He built the wealth of this city with his sweat, and he died with nothing because people like you stole it from him with a smile and a signature. I leaned down, bringing my face close to hers. You despised my blood, Evelyn, I said. You turned your nose up at it. You called it dirty. You said I didn't fit the aesthetic. Well, let me tell you something. I tapped the deed in my hand against the arm of her chair. That dirty blood just bought your roof. That sweat just bought your history. My blood owns the floor you are sitting on. My blood owns the walls that hid your lies. She was shaking her breath, coming in short gasps. You have 24 hours, I said, standing up straight. Take what you can carry. Leave the fixtures. Leave the copper wiring. If there is a single scratch on the molding when my crew gets here tomorrow at noon, I will sue you for the repair costs, and I will garnish your Social Security check until the day you die. I turned to leave. Where will I go? She wailed. Where am I supposed to go? I stopped at the door. I looked back at the empty, rotting mansion. I heard the Starlight Motel has vacancies, I said. It is cash only. But I am sure you can figure it out. You are a Sterling after all. I walked out of the house. I walked down the steps. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. It was a beautiful evening. I got into my truck. I felt lighter than I had in years. The debt was paid. The balance was zero. Evelyn Sterling was about to learn the hardest lesson of all. Privilege isn't a shield. It is a loan, and sooner or later, the lender comes to collect. Friday evening brought a storm to Atlanta. It was one of those summer downpours that turns the streets into rivers and makes the sky look like a bruised plum. Thunder rattled the windows of my house in the West End, the same windows Coretta used to open to let the breeze in on Sunday mornings. I was sitting in the living room, the lights off, listening to the rain hammer against the roof. It was a lonely sound, but it fit my mood. I had spent the week dismantling the lives of the people who tried to dismantle me, and while victory was sweet, it left a bitter aftertaste. 5 miles away in the damp, peeling room at the Starlight Motel, another storm was breaking. I didn't see it happen, but I know Preston Sterling. I know the type of man he is. A man like that doesn't go down with the ship. When the water starts rising, he looks for a life raft, and he doesn't care who he has to drown to get on it. Preston had seen the news. He knew about the FBI investigation. He knew about the fraud charges pending at Merit Financial. He knew the walls weren't just closing in, they were crushing him. And he knew that Nia, with her canceled credit cards and her repossessed car, was no longer an asset. She was dead weight. She was a liability. I imagine he waited until she went to the bathroom to wash her face, trying to scrub off the reality of her situation with bar soap. He moved fast. He grabbed the duffel bag. He grabbed the few pieces of jewelry Nia had managed to hide in her purse, a pair of diamond studs, a gold chain, the last remnants of her aesthetic. And then he grabbed the cash, the few $100s Nia had borrowed from a friend before the scandal broke, her escape fund, her food money. When Nia came out of the bathroom drying her face with a thin towel, the room was empty. The door was open, swinging in the wind. "Preston," she would have called out. "Preston, where did you go?" She probably ran to the door. She looked out into the parking lot just in time to see the taillights of a taxi fading into the rain. He didn't leave a note. He didn't say goodbye. He just took what was left and ran. She checked her purse. Empty. No cash, no jewelry, just a tube of lipstick and a dead cell phone. That was the moment the bottom truly fell out. She wasn't just broke. She wasn't just homeless. She was abandoned. The man she had chosen over her father, the man she had insulted her heritage for, had robbed her of her last dime and left her in a motel room she couldn't pay for another night in. She had two choices. She could stay there and wait for the manager to kick her out, or she could walk. She walked. I was staring at the rain streaking down the glass of my front door when the motion sensor light on the porch flickered on. It was sensitive. Sometimes a stray cat or a strong wind would trigger it. But this time the light revealed something that made my heart stop in my chest. Standing at the bottom of my driveway, soaked to the bone, was a woman. She didn't look like the bride I had seen on Saturday. She didn't look like the influencer who posted photos of champagne brunches. She looked like a ghost. Her hair was plastered to her skull. Her clothes, a pair of jeans and a sweatshirt she must have scavenged from somewhere, were dark with water. She was shivering so hard I could see it from 30 feet away. It was Naya. She walked slowly up the driveway. She didn't run. She didn't have the energy. She walked with her head down, her arms wrapped around herself, fighting the wind. She looked small, smaller than I had seen her in 20 years. I stood up from my chair. My first instinct, the instinct that is hardwired into every father's DNA, was to run to the door, to throw it open, to grab a blanket, to pull her into the warmth and tell her it was going to be okay. I wanted to make her hot cocoa. I wanted to dry her hair. I wanted to fix it. I took 2 steps toward the door, then I stopped. I froze in the middle of the living room, my hand hovering over the deadbolt. A memory flashed in my mind, bright and sharp as a knife. It wasn't a memory of her childhood. It was a memory from 5 days ago. The iron gate, the security guard looking away in embarrassment. Nia in her $15,000 dress looking at me through the bars. "You don't fit the aesthetic, Dad. Go away. You are a complication." The pain of that moment washed over me again, cold and fresh. She hadn't just rejected me, she had dehumanized me. She had looked at this man who carried her on his shoulders, who taught her to ride a bike, who held her hand at her mother's grave, and she saw an embarrassment. She saw a blemish on her perfect white picture. I looked at her through the peephole. She was standing on the porch now. She was trembling. She reached out a hand to knock, but she hesitated. She knew. She knew what she had done. She knew she had burned this bridge down to the pilings. Knock, knock, knock. The sound was weak, barely audible over the thunder. "Daddy," she called out. Her voice was thin, broken by the wind. "Daddy, are you there? It's me. It's Nia." I didn't answer. I stood on the other side of the wood, breathing quietly. "Daddy, please," she sobbed. "Preston left me. He took everything. I walked here. I walked 4 miles in the rain. I don't have anywhere else to go." I looked at her face through the glass. The mascara was running down her cheeks in black rivers. Her eyes were wide and terrified. She looked like the little girl who used to wake up from nightmares and run to my bed. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Open the door, Isaiah," a voice inside me screamed. "That is your baby. That is Coretta's baby. You promised you would protect her." But another voice, a deeper, older voice, answered back. "You are protecting her. You are protecting her from becoming a monster. If I opened the door now, if I let her in and wrapped her in a blanket and gave her a check, what would she learn? She would learn that she could set fire to my world, spit in my face, and rob me blind, and I would still be there to catch her. She would learn that consequences are for other people. She would learn that love is a weakness she can exploit. She wasn't crying because she was sorry. She was crying because she was wet. She was crying because her plan failed. She was crying because the ATM was closed. "Daddy!" she screamed, pounding on the door now with her fist. "I know you are in there. I see your truck. Open the door. I am your daughter." I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door. I closed my eyes. I remembered the day she was born. I remembered holding her in the hospital, her tiny hand gripping my finger. I remembered promising her the world. I had given her the world, and she threw it away because it wasn't shiny enough. "Daddy, I am cold," she wailed. "I am so cold." "I was cold too, Nia," I whispered to the empty room. "I was cold standing outside that gate while you laughed inside." I looked at her one more time. She was huddled against the doorframe, trying to find shelter from the wind. She looked pathetic. She looked broken. And for the first time in her life, she looked real. The veneer was gone. The pretense was washed away. There was no sterling legacy out there on the porch, just a girl who had made a series of catastrophic choices. I wanted to hate her. God knows I tried. I wanted to hate her for the theft, for the lies, for the disrespect. But I couldn't. I just felt a deep, aching sorrow. But sorrow is not a reason to unlock the deadbolt. I stepped back from the door. I walked into the kitchen. I sat down at the table. I could still hear her crying outside. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. Driving through blizzards was nothing compared to this. Burying my wife was the only thing that came close. This was a different kind of death. It was the death of the relationship I thought I had. It was the death of the father I used to be. I couldn't be her savior anymore. I had to be her mirror. I picked up my phone. I texted Marcus. "She is here, on the porch." Marcus replied instantly. "Do not open the door, Zeke. If you let her in now, the legal case weakens, and she learns nothing. She needs to hit the floor, not a mattress." "I know," I typed back. "But it is raining, Marcus. It is pouring." "She walked away from you in the sunshine," Marcus wrote. "Let her stand in the rain." He was right. He was cold, but he was right. I sat there for 10 minutes. The knocking stopped. The screaming turned into a low, rhythmic sobbing. Finally, I stood up. I couldn't leave her out there all night. I wasn't a monster. I was a father trying to teach a lesson, not a torturer. I walked back to the door. I put my hand on the lock. I turned it. The click was loud in the silence of the house. I opened the door. Nia fell forward, almost tumbling into the hallway. She looked up at me, water dripping from her nose, her hair matted to her face. She scrambled to her feet, reaching for me, ready to throw herself into my arms, ready to be forgiven, ready to be reinstated. "Daddy," she cried, a smile breaking through the misery. "Oh, thank God, I knew you wouldn't." I held up a hand. I didn't step back, but I didn't step forward. I stood in the doorway, blocking the entrance like a bouncer. "Stop," I said. My voice was low, devoid of warmth. Nia froze. Her arms dropped. She looked at my face and the smile vanished. She didn't see relief in my eyes. She saw granite. "Daddy," she whispered, "can I come in? It is freezing." "Preston left you?" I asked. She nodded, shivering violently. "He took the money. He ran. I didn't know where else to go." "You had nowhere else to go," I repeated. "So you came to the man you erased." "I am sorry," she choked out. "I am so sorry, Daddy. I was wrong. I was stupid. Please, just let me in." I looked at her. I looked past her into the dark, wet night. "You can come in," I said slowly. "But not as my daughter, not as Nia Sterling, and not as the girl who owns this house." "What?" she asked, confused. "You can come in," I said, "as a guest who has worn out her welcome. You can dry off. You can sleep on the couch. But tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock we are going to have a conversation. And if you lie to me, if you try to manipulate me, if you show me 1 ounce of that sterling arrogance, I will put you back out on this porch and I will change the locks again." Nia stared at me. She saw the truth in my face. She saw that the bank was closed. "Okay," she whispered, bowing her head. "Okay, Daddy." I stepped aside. She walked past me, dripping water onto the hardwood floor. She didn't hug me. She didn't dare. She walked into the living room and stood there, shivering, waiting for permission to sit down. I closed the door. I locked it. The storm was still raging outside, but the real storm, the one between us, was just settling into the eye. I went to the linen closet and got a towel. I threw it to her. She caught it. "Dry off," I said. "And don't get comfortable. This isn't a homecoming, Nia. It is a layover." I walked into the kitchen to make coffee. I had a feeling it was going to be a long night. And tomorrow the reckoning would truly begin. The sun rose over Atlanta with a brutal, blinding clarity. It was the kind of morning light that exposes everything: the dust on the baseboards, the gray in my beard, and the absolute ruin of the young woman sitting at my kitchen table. I had been up since 4 a.m. Old habits die hard, and sleep had been a stranger to me for days. I sat in my study listening to the silence of the house, gathering my strength for what I knew would be the hardest conversation of my life. At 8 o'clock sharp, I walked into the kitchen. Nia was there. She was wrapped in the old Afghan kareta used to crochet while watching Wheel of Fortune. Her eyes were swollen shut from crying. Her hair, usually a masterpiece of expensive weaves and treatments, was a tangled mess. She looked like a refugee from a war zone, which in a way she was. The war was her own vanity, and she had lost. When she saw me, she scrambled up from the chair. The blanket fell to the floor. She rushed toward me, her arms outstretched, a desperate, needy sound escaping her throat. It was the run of a child who had scraped her knee and wanted Daddy to kiss it better. She wanted to bury her face in my chest. She wanted to smell the starch on my shirt and the Old Spice I had worn for 30 years. She wanted to go back to the time when my arms were the safest place in the world. I stepped back. I didn't shove her. I didn't raise my voice. I just took one deliberate step backward and raised my hand palm out. A stop sign. Nia froze. Her arms hovered in the air, empty. She looked at my face and saw the wall I had built. It wasn't a wall of anger. It was a wall of resolve. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice cracking. I need a hug." "No," I said. My voice was gravel. "Hugs are for comfort, Nia, and I am not here to comfort you today. I am here to wake you up." She flinched as if I had slapped her. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to hold her own pieces together. "I am sorry," she sobbed. "I am so sorry. I was wrong, Daddy. You were right about everything." She took a breath and then she said the words I knew were coming. The words she thought would be the magic key to unlock my wallet and my heart. "Preston tricked me," she cried. "He lied to me, Daddy. He told me he had money. He told me he loved me. He used me. I am a victim here." I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had stood at the gates of Sterling Manor in a $15,000 dress and told me I didn't fit the aesthetic. I walked over to the counter and poured myself a cup of coffee. I didn't pour one for her. "No, Nia," I said, turning back to face her. "Preston didn't trick you. He did. He stole the money. He ran away. Preston is a con artist." I agreed. He lied about his bank account. He lied about his job. He lied about his love. He scammed you out of your money. "Yes." I took a sip of coffee. It was bitter. "Good. But he didn't scam you into treating me like garbage," I said. Nia stopped crying for a second. She blinked, confused. "Preston didn't make you erase my name from the guest list 2 weeks ago," I continued, my voice rising just a fraction. "He didn't make you hire a security guard to keep me out. He didn't make you tell me to my face that my black skin and my working man's hands were a stain on your perfect white wedding. But he said—" "I don't care what he said," I roared, slamming the coffee cup down on the counter. The ceramic cracked. Coffee spilled onto the laminate. "This isn't about Preston, Nia. This is about you. You chose. You chose to look at your father, the man who wiped your tears and paid your tuition and built a world for you, and you decided I wasn't good enough. You decided I was an embarrassment. You decided I was a prop that didn't fit the set design." She was trembling now, backing away from me until she hit the refrigerator. "You killed him, Nia," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that filled the room. "You killed the father in your heart long before Preston Sterling ever showed up. You buried me under your ambition. You traded my dignity for a seat at a table where they didn't even want you. Daddy? No. Don't call me Daddy," I said. "You fired me. Remember, I am just Isaiah King now. The truck driver. The man who doesn't fit." I reached into my pocket. I pulled out a white business envelope. It was crisp, clean. It looked like the kind of envelope that holds a check. Nia saw it. Her eyes lit up. Just a flicker. A tiny subconscious spark of hope. She thought it was the bailout. She thought it was the money for a hotel, for a new car, for a fresh start. She thought the nightmare was over because Daddy had opened the checkbook. That spark broke my heart more than anything else. She still didn't get it. She still thought money was the cure. I held the envelope out to her. "Take it," I said. She reached for it with shaking hands. She took it. She ripped it open. Her fingers fumbling in her haste, she pulled out the contents. It wasn't a check. It wasn't cash. It was a single ticket, a Greyhound bus ticket, one way, to Savannah, and behind it a folded brochure. The Second Chance Job Center. Nia stared at the ticket. She turned it over in her hands as if it were an alien artifact. She looked at the brochure. She looked at me. "What is this?" she whispered. "That is your inheritance," I said. "But—" "Savannah. A bus I started from zero, Nia," I said. "I started with a mop bucket and a dream. You wanted to be a self-made woman. You wanted to be an entrepreneur. Well, here is your seed capital, a ticket out of town and a place to find a job." "You are kicking me out?" she asked, her voice rising in disbelief. "You are sending me away on a bus, like a hobo. I am sending you to reality," I said. "In Atlanta, you are Nia Sterling, the failed socialite. You are the girl who got towed on live stream. You are a joke here, Nia, and as long as you stay here, you will be looking for a handout. You will be looking for me to fix it." I walked closer to her. I looked deep into her eyes. "You need to go somewhere where nobody cares who your daddy is. You need to go somewhere where the only thing that matters is how hard you work. You need to scrub floors, you need to wait tables, you need to feel your feet ache at the end of a shift. You need to learn what $1 actually weighs, Nia, because right now you think it is paper, but I know it is iron. I can't do that, she screamed, throwing the ticket on the floor. I am educated, I have a degree, I am not a maid. Your degree didn't stop you from marrying a con man, I said. Your education didn't teach you character, you have to learn that from the ground up. I pointed to the door. The bus leaves at noon, I said. I packed a bag for you. It is on the porch, it has jeans, t-shirts, work boots. No silk, no designer labels, just clothes for living. You are hating me, she yelled. You are doing this to hurt me. I am doing this to save you, I shouted back, my voice finally breaking. If I give you money now, you will never change. You will just find another Preston. You will just find another mask to wear. I want my daughter back, Naya, the real one. And the only way to find her is to strip away everything else. I picked up the ticket from the floor. I pressed it into her hand. I closed her fingers around it. Go, I said. My voice was soft now. Go to Savannah. Get a job. Pay your own rent. Buy your own food. And when you can buy a ticket back here with money you earned, money you sweat for, then you come see me. Then we can talk. She looked at the ticket. She looked at me. She saw the tears in my eyes. She saw the love that was so fierce it had to be cruel to be kind. She didn't say anything. She didn't say goodbye. She just turned around. She walked out of the kitchen. She walked down the hall. She opened the front door. I watched her pick up the duffel bag I had left on the porch. It was a cheap canvas bag. It looked heavy on her shoulder. She walked down the driveway. The rain had stopped, but the ground was still wet. She didn't look back. She started walking toward the bus stop on the corner. I watched until she turned the corner and disappeared. I closed the door. I locked it. I went back to the kitchen. I looked at the spilled coffee on the floor. I got a rag. I got down on my knees, my old joints popping, and I started to wipe it up. I was 72 years old. I was alone. My house was empty. But for the first time in years, I had hope. Nia was gone. But maybe, just maybe, the woman who came back would be someone I could recognize. I finished cleaning the floor. I stood up. I washed the rag in the sink. It was done. The aesthetic was destroyed. The foundation was stripped bare. Now we would see if anything could grow from the rubble. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the hammer finally came down. I was not there to see it happen, but Agent Miller sent me the surveillance footage later. It was the kind of footage you watch not because you enjoy it, but because you need to know the job is finished. You need to see the load delivered to the final destination. Preston Sterling was at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. He was trying to board a flight to the Cayman Islands. He was wearing a linen suit and a Panama hat, trying to look like a tourist going on vacation, but he looked more like a rat fleeing a sinking ship. He was sweating. You could see the sheen of it on his forehead even through the grainy security camera video. He kept checking his watch. He kept looking over his shoulder. He had the $50,000. Or rather, he had the wire confirmation that he had moved the funds from my check into an offshore account. He thought he was clever. He thought he had laundered the money fast enough. He thought he was one plane ride away from a new life where he could find another Mark, another heiress to bleed dry. He walked up to the gate. He handed his boarding pass to the attendant. She scanned it. The machine beeped. A red light flashed. I watched him stiffen. I watched him argue. I saw the moment his arrogance turned into panic. He tried to grab his passport back. He tried to turn around and walk away. But the exit was blocked. Two men in dark suits stepped out from behind a pillar. FBI. They did not run. They did not shout. They just walked up to him with the casual inevitability of a freight train. Preston tried to run. It was a pathetic attempt. He took 2 steps before he tripped over his own carry-on bag. He hit the floor hard. Before he could scramble up, he was pinned. The handcuffs went on. People were watching. Tourists with their smartphones were recording. Preston was screaming. He was shouting that it was a mistake, that he was a Sterling, that he had rights. But the agents did not care about his last name. They only cared about the warrant for wire fraud, bank fraud, and identity theft. They hauled him up and marched him out of the terminal. The linen suit was rumpled, the hat was left on the floor, the aesthetic was officially over. While Preston was being processed into federal custody, his mother was facing her own reckoning. Evelyn Sterling had spent 24 hours in the Starlight Motel after I evicted her. She did not handle it well. She had called the police claiming I had stolen her home. She had screamed at the motel manager because the ice machine was too loud. She had tried to pay for a meal delivery with a canceled credit card. When the police ran her name, they found the outstanding warrants for check fraud dating back 3 years. Warrants she had managed to dodge by moving around and using her son's name. But with Preston in custody and her assets seized, her cover was blown. She did not go to jail, though, not immediately. The stress of the eviction combined with the shock of her son's arrest caused a breakdown. A real one this time, not a performance for sympathy. She collapsed in the motel lobby. Since she had no assets, no insurance, and no family willing to claim her, the state took over. They placed her in a long-term care facility in South Atlanta. It was a Medicaid facility. It was clean, but it was stark. It smelled of industrial cleaner and boiled vegetables. It was the kind of place Evelyn Sterling would have sneered at from the window of her limousine. Now, it was her home. I went to see her once, just to make sure the paperwork was filed correctly. I stood in the doorway of her room. She was sitting in a wheelchair by the window staring out at a parking lot. She was wearing a hospital gown. Her jewelry was gone. Her makeup was gone. She looked small and gray. She didn't see me, or if she did, she didn't recognize me. The doctor said she had dissociated. She was living in a world where she was still the queen of Buckhead. I didn't say a word. I just nodded to the nurse and walked away. I paid the facility administrator to ensure she had extra blankets and decent food. Not because I forgave her, but because I am not her. I don't kick people when they are down. I just make sure they stay down. 2 days later, I drove to the Federal Detention Center in downtown Atlanta. It is a grim building, a fortress of concrete and steel that swallows the sun. It is a place where time stops. I went through security. I surrendered my phone, my keys, my belt. I walked through the metal detectors. I sat in the visitation room, a cold space divided by thick plexiglass. I waited. 10 minutes later, the heavy metal door buzzed open. A guard led Preston in. He looked like a different species. The tan was gone, replaced by a jailhouse pallor. His hair was unwashed. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit that was 2 sizes too big. He shuffled when he walked, his ankles shackled. He sat down on the metal stool on the other side of the glass. He picked up the phone receiver. His hand was shaking. "Isaiah," he whispered. I picked up my phone. I looked at him. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I just looked. "You came," he said, a flicker of hope lighting up his eyes. "You came to help." I knew it. I knew you wouldn't let family rot in here. Look, I can explain. The check. It was a misunderstanding. I was going to invest it. I was going to surprise you. I cut him off. "Stop talking, Preston." He closed his mouth. The hope flickered and died. "I am not here to help you," I said. My voice was calm, echoing slightly in the hard plastic of the receiver. "I am not here to bail you out. I am not here to pay for your lawyer." Then why, he asked. "Why are you here to laugh, to gloat? Is that it? You want to see the great Preston Sterling in a cage?" I leaned forward. My forehead almost touched the glass. "I am here to deliver a message," I said. "A message you need to hear clearly because I am only going to say it once." I waited until he was looking me in the eye. "Nia is gone," I said. "She is out of your reach. She is starting over. And you are never ever going to speak to her again." Preston scoffed. "She is my wife. She loves me. She will come for me. When she finds out what you did, she knows what I did," I said. "And she knows what you did. She knows you stole from her. She knows you forged her signature. She knows you left her in a motel room with nothing but the clothes on her back while you ran away with the cash." He flinched. "You are going to be in here for a long time, Preston," I continued. "The FBI has you on wire fraud, bank fraud, and money laundering. My lawyers estimate you are looking at 15 years minimum." "That is a long time to think." I paused. But eventually you might get out. Or maybe you will try to call her from inside. Maybe you will try to write her letters spinning your lies, trying to drag her back into your web. I gripped the phone tighter. Don't! Preston tried to summon some of his old arrogance. Or, what are you going to do? You already took everything. I have nothing left to lose. You have your life, I said, and you have your comfort. I looked around the visitation room. I looked at the guards. I looked back at him. I have friends in here, Preston. Friends I grew up with. Friends I did business with before I went legitimate. They are lifers. They don't have anything to lose either, and they owe me favors. Preston's face went white. He swallowed hard. If you contact Nia, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that was louder than a scream. If you send a letter, if you make a call, if you send a message through a lawyer, if you even think her name too loud, my friends will hear about it. And they will make your stay here very, very uncomfortable. You are threatening me, he stammered. I am promising you, I said. This isn't a negotiation. This is the terms of your surrender. You erase her from your mind. You forget she exists. You serve your time, and when you get out, you go somewhere very far away from Atlanta. Because if I ever see your face near my daughter again, the police will be the least of your problems. He stared at me. He saw the truth in my eyes. He saw the man who had built an empire with his bare hands. He saw the father who had been pushed too far. Okay, he whispered. Okay, I won't. I promise. Good, I said. I hung up the phone. Preston sat there holding the receiver, looking like a child who had been caught stealing from the cookie jar and realized the jar was full of scorpions. I stood up. I didn't say goodbye. I turned and walked toward the exit. I walked out of the detention center and into the bright sunlight. The air tasted sweet. The traffic noise sounded like music. I had closed the book on Preston Sterling. He was a memory now, a bad dream that Nia would wake up from. I got into my truck. I checked my watch. I had a meeting with the realtors to sign the papers for the sale of the Buckhead house. And then I had a long drive to Savannah. I wasn't going to see Nia. Not yet. I wasn't going to interfere. But I was going to drive past the place where she was working. I was going to watch from a distance. I just needed to see her. I needed to see her standing on her own 2 feet. I started the engine. The vibration of the truck felt like a heartbeat. Strong, steady. The past was dead. The future was unwritten. And for the first time in a long time, the road ahead was clear. The for sale sign went up in the front yard of the Buckhead house on a Tuesday. By Thursday, it was under contract. The market was hot, and people were hungry for the kind of colonial fantasy I had bought for a daughter who didn't exist. I walked through the empty rooms one last time before handing over the keys. The floors echoed with the sound of my boots. It was a beautiful house. It had marble countertops and crown molding and a staircase designed for grand entrances. But to me, it just looked like a mausoleum. It was a monument to a mistake, a 5-bedroom reminder that you cannot buy loyalty and you cannot build a home on a foundation of shame. I signed the closing papers at Marcus's office. The buyers were a young couple, a doctor and a lawyer expecting their first child. They looked at the house and saw a future. I looked at the check and saw closure. But selling the house was the easy part. The hard part was the yard. King Logistics. My baby. My blood, sweat, and tears for 40 years. I stood in the middle of the dispatch center, listening to the radio chatter, the hum of the servers, the distant rumble of idling diesels. I knew every driver by name. I knew the maintenance schedule of every rig. I knew the routes better than the GPS did. But I was tired. The war with the Sterlings, the betrayal by Nia, the FBI investigation. It had taken something out of me. It had aged me 10 years and 10 days. I realized that I had spent my whole life climbing the mountain, but I had never taken the time to enjoy the view. I called a meeting with the senior staff. I told them I was selling, not to a conglomerate, not to some private equity firm that would strip it for parts. I was selling it to the employees. An employee stock ownership plan. I was financing it myself. They would pay me back out of the profits over the next 20 years. When I made the announcement, there was silence. Then there were tears. These men and women had worked for me for decades. They were used to being employees. Now they were owners. I walked out of that building with a cardboard box in my hands containing a photo of Coretta, my favorite stapler, and a ceramic mug that said "World's Best Boss." It was lighter than I expected. I got into my truck. I didn't look back. I had built the empire. Now it was time to let it run itself. With the sale of the house and the restructuring of the company, I was sitting on more liquid cash than I had ever seen in my life. It was enough money to buy an island. It was enough money to ruin a person, as I had learned the hard way. I sat in my kitchen in the West End looking at the bank balance on my laptop. It was just a number. Digits on a screen. It didn't make me happy. It didn't bring Coretta back. It didn't bring Nia back. I thought about what Coretta would have wanted. She was a teacher. She believed in books. She believed that education was the only ladder that couldn't be pulled up behind you. I called Marcus. I want to start a foundation, I said. He wasn't surprised. What kind of foundation? Zeke, the Coretta King Memorial Scholarship, I said. I want to find kids like me, kids from the West End, kids from Vine City, kids who have dirt under their fingernails and fire in their bellies but who can't afford the tuition. I want to send them to college. I want to send them to trade school. I want to give them the chance I had to fight for. We set it up within a week. I endowed it with $5 million. It was enough to send dozens of kids to school every year in perpetuity. The first board meeting was held in a community center basement. We reviewed applications. There were essays from kids who wanted to be engineers, nurses, mechanics. They wrote about their struggles. They wrote about their dreams. They didn't write about aesthetics. They didn't write about fitting in. They wrote about working hard. Reading those essays healed something in me. It reminded me that Nia wasn't the only young person in the world. It reminded me that for every ungrateful child who throws away a gift, there are 10 who are praying for a chance. I signed the first batch of scholarship checks with a steady hand. I wasn't buying love. I was investing in the future. And unlike my investment in the Sterling wedding, I knew this one would pay dividends. With the business gone and the money allocated, I found myself with something I hadn't had since I was 16 years old. Time. I looked at my calendar. It was empty. No meetings, no deadlines, no invoices. I looked at my truck. I looked at the map of the United States taped to my refrigerator. I went to the sporting goods store. I bought a new fishing rod. I bought a cooler. I bought a tent just in case, though I preferred motels with actual mattresses. I drove south. I didn't have a destination. I just followed the road. I drove through the pine forests of Georgia down into the humidity of Florida. I found a spot on the Gulf Coast, a little town where the water was blue and the shrimp were fresh. I rented a small cabin on the water. I spent my days sitting on the end of a pier watching the line bob in the water. I caught redfish. I caught trout. Sometimes I didn't catch anything at all, and that was fine too. For 40 years, my life had been about movement, getting from point A to point B as fast as possible, maximum efficiency, maximum profit. Now my life was about stillness. It was about watching the sun rise over the water and drinking a cup of coffee without checking my watch. I wasn't lonely. Loneliness is when you want to be with people who don't want to be with you. Solitude is when you are content with your own company. But I wasn't entirely alone. I had my people. Big Tiny drove down to visit me one weekend. We sat on the porch of the cabin drinking beer and eating grilled snapper. Tiny told me about his security business, about his kids. He didn't ask me for money. He didn't ask me for connections. He just wanted to hang out with his friend Zeke. Marcus came down a few weeks later. He brought a bottle of whiskey and some cigars. We sat on the dock at night smoking and watching the moonlight on the waves. "You look younger," Zeke, Marcus said. "I feel younger," I said. "I feel like I finally put the load down." "Have you heard from her?" Marcus asked. He didn't have to say the name. I looked out at the horizon. No, not a word. "She is in Savannah," Marcus said. "My investigator checks in on her. She is working at a diner. Double shifts. She is living in a studio apartment above a garage. She walks to work." I nodded. "Is she safe?" "She is safe. She is tired. But she is paying her bills." "Good," I said. "That is good." I took a drag of the cigar. I missed her. God, I missed her. There was a hole in my chest shaped like my daughter, and the salt air couldn't fill it. But I knew I couldn't call her. Not yet. She was in the forge. She was being tempered. If I pulled her out now, she would be brittle forever. I stayed on the coast for 3 months. I grew a beard. My skin got darker from the sun. My hands, once stained with grease, were now stained with salt and fish scales. I slept 8 hours a night. I realized that this was the life Coretta and I had talked about. This was the dream we had deferred for so long. I wished she was there to see it. I wished she was sitting in the chair next to me reading her book. But in a way she was. I felt her in the breeze. I heard her in the waves. I wasn't just surviving, I was living. I made friends with the locals. An old shrimper named Captain Jack. A waitress at the breakfast joint named Sally. They didn't know I was a millionaire. They didn't know I had destroyed a prominent Atlanta family. To them, I was just Zeke, the guy who told good stories and tipped well. It was refreshing. It was honest. One afternoon, while I was cleaning a mess of catfish on the dock, I looked at my reflection in a bucket of water. The man looking back at me wasn't the stressed, angry man who had driven away from Sterling Manor. He was calm. He was weathered. He looked like a man who had weathered the storm and come out the other side. I had lost a lot. I had lost the illusion of a perfect family. I had lost the hope of a traditional legacy. But I had found myself. I had found the Isaiah King who existed before the business, before the money, before the expectations. I packed up my gear. The sun was going down, painting the sky in shades of violent orange and purple. It was time to go back to the cabin. It was time to cook dinner. I wasn't rich because of the zeros in my bank account. I was rich because I owned my time. I owned my dignity. And for the first time in my life, I didn't owe anybody a damn thing. I walked down the pier humming an old gospel song Coretta used to love. The road ahead was shorter than the road behind, I knew that. But the view was a hell of a lot better. 5 years have passed since the day I watched my daughter walk down that driveway in the rain. 5 years is a long time. It is enough time for a sapling to become a sturdy young tree. It is enough time for a jagged wound to turn into a silver scar. And it is enough time for a man to find peace in the silence he once feared. I am 77 years old now. I move a little slower. The arthritis in my knees flares up when the humidity rises off the Gulf, but my hands are steady and my mind is clear. I still live in the cabin on the water. I never went back to Atlanta to live, though I visit Marcus sometimes to check on the foundation. The city is too loud for me now, too full of ghosts. Here the only noise is the tide coming in and the shrimp boats heading out at dawn. I was sitting on my porch swing this morning watching the sun burn the mist off the water when the mail carrier pulled up. He knows me by name. He handed me a small stack of letters, electric bill, water bill, a fishing catalog, and a small cream-colored envelope with no return address. I knew the handwriting immediately. It had been 5 years, but a father never forgets the way his child loops their L's or dots their E's. It was from Nia. I didn't open it right away. I set it on the small table beside my coffee. I looked at it for a long time. For the first 2 years, I didn't hear a word from her. Marcus kept tabs on her, of course. He told me she struggled. She worked as a dishwasher for 6 months. Then she got a job stocking shelves at a grocery store. She lived in a studio apartment above a garage that had no air conditioning. She walked to work until she saved enough for a beat-up Honda Civic. She didn't call me. She didn't ask for help. She took her punishment like the woman I always hoped she could be. 3 years ago, she got promoted. She is the manager of a small hardware store in Savannah now. Marcus sent me a picture his investigator took from a distance. Nia was wearing a polo shirt with the store logo and jeans. She wasn't wearing makeup. She looked tired. She looked 5 years older than her age. But she was standing tall. She was directing a delivery truck holding a clipboard looking at the driver with authority. She looked like me. Not the Isaiah King who wore suits to board meetings, but the Zeke who ran the loading dock. She looked like a worker. I picked up the envelope. My thumb traced the stamp. It wasn't a wedding invitation. It wasn't a legal summons. It was just a letter. I opened it. Inside was a simple card. On the front, a picture of a sailboat on calm water. I opened it. A check didn't fall out. A list of demands didn't fall out. The message was short. Happy 77th birthday, Daddy. I saw this card and thought of you. I hope the fishing is good. I am doing okay. I paid off my car last week. It is not a Range Rover, but it is mine. I think about you often. Love, Nia. That was it. No apology. No begging. Just a status report. It is mine. I ran my thumb over the ink. She paid off her car. She did it with money she earned standing on her feet for 10 hours a day. She did it without a credit card in my name. I smiled. It wasn't a big toothy grin. It was a small, quiet smile that settled in the corners of my eyes. I looked at the phone sitting on the railing. It would be so easy to pick it up. It would be so easy to call the hardware store in Savannah and ask for the manager. I could hear her voice. I could tell her I was proud of her. I could tell her that the foundation was waiting for her, that there was a place for her in the family legacy whenever she wanted it. But I didn't reach for the phone. I knew that if I called, I would break the spell. If I stepped back in now, I would become the safety net again. I would become the crutch. Nia was walking on her own, but her legs were still strengthening. If I offered her a hand, she might take it, and she might forget how to balance on her own. Forgiveness is a tricky thing. People think forgiveness means going back to the way things were. They think it means hugging and crying and pretending the fire never happened. But sometimes forgiveness is just letting go of the anger. It is wishing someone well from a distance. It is hoping they find their way even if their path no longer crosses yours. I had forgiven Naya. I had forgiven her for the gate. I had forgiven her for the theft. I had forgiven her for being ashamed of me. But I hadn't forgotten. And I knew that some relationships are like a vase that has been shattered. You can glue it back together and it might hold water, but you will always see the cracks. And if you put too much pressure on it, it will shatter again, sharper this time. I stood up. I took the card into the cabin. I went to the cedar chest at the foot of my bed. Inside were the few things I truly treasured. Coretta's Bible, my first commercial driver's license, a photo of me and Big Tiny from the old days. I placed Nia's card on top of the Bible. I would keep it. I would treasure it. It was proof that my daughter had survived the fire I threw her into. It was proof that beneath the layers of sterling rot, there was iron in her blood after all. Preston Sterling was currently sitting in a federal penitentiary in Florida serving year 4 of a 15-year sentence. He sent me letters sometimes, begging letters, threatening letters. I burned them without reading them. He hadn't learned, he never would. He was a man who believed the world owed him a living. But Nia had learned. She was managing a store. She was paying her bills. She was living a small, quiet, honest life. She was no longer an heiress. She was no longer an influencer. She was a citizen. I closed the chest. I walked back out to the porch. The sun was higher now. The water was sparkling like diamonds. Real diamonds, not the paste ones Preston tried to pass off. I thought about the life I had built. I thought about the legacy of the Coretta King Scholarship. We had sent 50 kids to college last year. 50 kids who grew up like me, who just needed a chance. They wrote me letters too. They called me Mr. King. They respected me, not because I had money, but because I gave them a ladder. Nia had to build her own ladder, and she was doing it rung by rung. Maybe in another 5 years, when she has gray in her hair and calluses on her hands, maybe then I will drive to Savannah. Maybe I will walk into that hardware store and buy a hammer. Maybe I will look at her and see an equal, but not today. Today, the greatest gift I could give her was my silence. The greatest love I could show her was to let her keep struggling, because the struggle was making her real. I picked up my fishing rod. I checked the line. It was strong. I walked down the steps of the porch and headed toward the dock. The air smelled of salt and pine. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the freedom I had bought at such a high price. I was Isaiah King. I was a truck driver. I was a father. And for the first time in a long time, I was proud of my daughter. Not for who she married or what she wore or where she lived. I was proud of her because she was still standing. We often spend our lives building castles for our children, hoping they will shelter us in our old age. But when those castles are built on the foundation of entitlement rather than gratitude, they become our prisons. True legacy isn't the money you leave behind, but the values you instill. I learned that cutting off a toxic branch, even if it is your own flesh and blood, is the only way to save the tree. Respect is not a gift, it is a currency. If you cannot afford to pay it, you do not deserve to sit at my table. If you enjoyed this story of justice and hard-earned lessons, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you believe that respect is the most important currency in a family, subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. Let me know in the comments, would you have opened the door that night? Until next time, keep your head up and your eyes on the road. Peace.